Bring to order the Brattleboro Selectboard meeting for Tuesday, May 6th, 2025. This is a regular meeting, and the executive session was held at 5:45. We discussed real estate matters, and no decisions were made. And just as those of you keeping score at home, we've had 10 weeks of meetings, either once or twice every week, since February 24th. So, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
None that I'm aware of.
Anyone? All right. Let's have a motion to approve various meeting minutes from April 8th, April 10th, and April 15th, 2025.
I'd like to move to approve those minutes.
Great. Isaac has moved to approve the minutes of April 8th, April 10th, and April 15th. All select board members in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Very good. Okay, chair's remarks. Well, I have some rules to read, and on the surface you think, well, that's kind of not important, but apparently it is. So, these are highlights of the rules of procedure approved by the Select Board in April?
Yep.
Okay. Meetings of the Select Board are conducted in public. Meetings of the Select Board are a limited public forum. Public comment is open to all members of the public, not just residents of Brattleboro. Members of the public must be acknowledged by the chair before speaking and address their comments to the chair. Speakers will be taken on a first-come, first-served basis, though the chair may suspend this rule to protect against repetitive or non-germane comments and to ensure that a varied, especially opposing viewpoints, are heard. A member of the public may only speak more than once on the same agenda item, time permitting, with the consent of the chair, and only after every other member of the public has been given an opportunity to speak on an item. Order must be observed by all people attending a select board meeting, whether in person or electronically. And people shall speak for 3 minutes this time, and comment may be limited subject to the reasonable rules of the chair. And no person may disturb or otherwise impede, except for a point of order, the orderly conduct of the meeting or interrupt any person while they are speaking. Speakers must refrain from repetitious speech or speech that is irrelevant to the business of the Select Board. The chair will preserve order in the meeting and regulate its proceedings by applying these rules and by making determinations about all questions of order or procedure. Thank you. John, do you have any remarks?
Yes, I have a few. As you know, we're gearing up for committee appointments again, and I understand we already have 17 applications, which is great. But if anyone out there is interested in volunteering to serve on a town committee, please look for further information at the May 20th Select Board meeting, or reach out to Jessica Stickler in the town manager's office. Just another reminder to get your dog licensed as soon as possible. If you haven't already done that, the warrant for unlicensed dogs will be going on the Select Board's June 3rd meeting. There's also still a couple of weeks grace period on renewing your business licenses. If you haven't renewed your business license yet, please get that done as soon as possible to avoid a $100 fine starting May 23rd. And just a quick reminder, there'll be an information meeting ahead of the special representative town meeting at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, May 21st at Academy School. There will be district caucuses for each district at 5:45 p.m. that same night to appoint members to vacancies. And finally, the Select Board has scheduled a special representative town meeting for Tuesday, May 27th at 6:30 p.m. at the Brattleboro Union High School gym.
Great. Thank you, John. Are there Select Board members who would like to make comments or give a committee report?
I would.
Go right ahead.
This afternoon, I had an opportunity to attend the vigil in Pliny Park to honor the lives affected by homelessness in our community. You may have For folks here in the room, you may have noticed the purple flags in front of the municipal building, which were planted there today, which is the Homelessness Awareness Action Day. And this event was organized by the Community Homelessness Strategy Team of the Housing Coalition of Southeast Vermont in collaboration with the Housing and Homelessness Alliance of Vermont. The vigil brought together homeless and formerly homeless Vermonters, service providers, homelessness and housing advocates, faith communities, and other concerned citizens of Windham County. And I wanted just to thank the folks who put that on and participated, and share some words from Michael, who is a person who was unhoused for 3 years after their apartment burned down. They said that I could share this. What they shared at the vigil was they want everyone to remember the unhoused people who have died, and that a single organization can't do everything. People need more places to go. People don't need to be dying. And people can't get warm when they go home if they don't have a home. We're all in this together. We have each other, and we have to stick together. I look forward to the presentation today on the Housing Action Plan and working with all of you to address the needs of shelter in our community. Thanks.
Thank you, Isaac. Anyone else? All right. Let's move on then to public participation. This is comments that people may have that is not associated with tonight's agenda. Kate O'Connor would like to speak.
Hi, everyone. Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. I just wanted to give everybody an update about the Charter Revision Commission's meeting schedule because we got all discombobulated. We're going to meet on May 22nd and May 29th, which are both Thursdays. Our meetings are here in the Select Board meeting room at 6:15. You can also watch them on Zoom. These two meetings, we are going to be discussing Brattleboro's form of town meeting. And hopefully by the 29th or on the 29th, we're going to be making a recommendation on what form of town meeting we think the town should move towards. So we want to make sure people either come to the meeting. If you want to make a comment, you can watch it via Zoom, or you can email us at charter@brattleboro.gov, and all the information about the Charter Revision Commission is on the town website under Charter. So we hope everybody will come. This is the chance. We're going to see if we can make this big decision. So thank you.
Dick? Mr. DeGray?
Thank you. Dick DeGray, District 8. A few questions. About a week and a half ago, when you were talking about the budget, we had our auditor, who's now going to be our finance director, it looks like, ran some numbers, and we were $418,000 short for contributions. I believe that's the number. You can correct me if I'm wrong. No,
That includes the firefighters.
that included the firefighters.
Make your comment. Go ahead.
So I was wondering, because I thought it was short of contributions for retirement and overtime, and there was other things that attributed to that. And so my question is, did you run the numbers for the current year that we're in this budget to make sure that we don't have any deficiencies in those areas? And if you haven't, I would hope that you would, and have that information for the next financial report and your next meeting. And then the next question I have for you is the lights at the junction. When is the state going to come down and synchronize those lights? It is an absolute mess down there. It was a mess before I left, and I think it's even a bigger mess. When you're traveling north, coming down Canal Street, and you don't get the light right away because the car's traveling south heading towards the bridge in Hinsdale, or just on 142, get the bulk of the time. And I think I've counted an average of 6 cars that get to go through traveling north on Canal Street. And I think it's also a byproduct of the light at Flat Street and the light at Elliott and the light at High Street all need to be synchronized. And I believe the state does that. And so I would hope that you would work on getting those the state down here, because it really is a mess down there, and it creates a lot of tension and frustration. Thank you.
Thank you. John, you want to address any of those comments now, or you want to wait until you find
Sure.
the answers?
But I'm happy to. So, yeah, I do think we have a similar issue in the FY25 budget. I don't know the extent, but we will be talking about that at your next budget update. What else? Oh, the lights. So that is an issue that I know that DPW has been working closely with VTrans to figure out how we can make some changes there. Of course, whenever you make a change, it has unintended consequences and can mess something else up. So they're trying to be deliberate about it and try to do that in a systematic way to figure out the best long-term timing on all of those different lights, which all contribute to the issue. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Great. Oscar?
Just a quick informational response to Dick, if that's okay.
Yes, keep it brief. It's not a warned item.
Yep. Just there, I have seen confusion out there in the conversation about the FY26 budget error and what the exact numbers are, and I think we'll find a way to make those numbers clearer, hopefully before town meeting. So we'll have more on that.
Certainly we will. Mm-hmm. Yes, Seth?
We have Bob Ozer on Zoom.
Sure, let's do Kate first.
Hi, Kate Traskis, District 9, I think. I just wanted to say thank you to our partners far and wide for a great First Friday Gallery Walk event on Friday night. We have an extensive list. Erin Skaggs is our creative director who wrangles this event, and I'm just so proud of how it was this past Friday, just the energy, the music, the food, the arts, all of it just really is a testament, I think, to what's possible in Brattleboro. I also want to thank everybody who participated in Green Up Day on Saturday morning. So this was the first year the DBA was coordinating for Brattleboro. And we had some new partners, Byway Books on Canal Street, Retreat Farm. We put a table in Plenty Park. Of course, the fire department and others pitched in. And a special shout out to some of my One Brattleboro peers who showed up to do some time at the table on Saturday morning. So thank you.
And thank you, Kate. It was really a lovely, well, both events were really great. Thank you. Bob Ozer?
I think I'm here. So oriented here. Bob Ozer, Brattleboro. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I shall read. In recent weeks, we have once again been witnessing incomplete, inaccurate, and misleading information about our organization as Brattleboro town staff attempt to justify the expenses of the new fire-based ambulance service. Please let me clarify several details for your benefit and the benefit of the public. I'm sorry, that was the first paragraph of a Rescue Inc. letter, which was read at the May 1st meeting. However, I do believe that all members of the board have received that full letter and do hope that a further discussion, a deeper dive, will take place into those numbers, because I think that is still an issue. What I wanted to share today was that in conjunction with an excerpt from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns on the model rules of procedure for boards. The rules of procedures only work as well as they're followed, which requires applying them fairly and consistently without distinction between who the speaker is or what their position is, and regardless of whether they attend in person or via remote means. And thank you very much.
Is there anyone else from the public who would wish to speak? Not seeing any, then we can proceed with our regular meeting, which is, of course, very exciting to the Select Board. John, would you like to present a thumbnail sketch of the consent agenda?
I will. You have 7 items on the consent agenda tonight. If you approve this, you will be approving renewal applications for 2025 liquor licenses, tobacco licenses, outside consumption permits, and tobacco substitute endorsements for 61 establishments. These have been reviewed by the police and fire departments, as well as the finance department, and building a positive community. You will be approving a new outside consumption permit for the Royal Diner, located at 478 Marlborough Road, and one for Martocci's, located at 75 Elliott Street. You'll be approving the acceptance of a Vermont Department of Public Safety grant of FEMA funds in the amount of up to $235,406 to repair a washout on Melchen Road that has reduced that road to a one-lane road since the severe storm of December 19th, 2023. You'll be ratifying the submission of a $600 grant application by the Conservation Commission to the Association of Vermont Conservation Commissions for creation of a pollinator habitat at the Brattleboro Police Station. You'll be ratifying the decision to repair an electric line at the Black Mountain Pump Station in the amount of $15,600 from the FY25 Utilities operating budget. And you will be approving a parade permit for the AIDS project of Southern Vermont's AIDS Walk, which will be held on Saturday, May 31st.
Great. Thank you, John. Is there anyone on the Select Board who would like to pull an item from the consent agenda? Is there anyone on the Select Board who would like to make a motion concerning the consent agenda?
I'll motion. I motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Great. Peter has moved to approve the consent agenda as presented. All Select Board members in favor of that motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Great. That's 5-0. And now we can move to our regular business. And the first item of regular business is parking system improvements. John, would you like to tell us about that?
Yes. This has been a really great team effort, and I would invite Darren Pacheco and Assistant Chief Evans and anyone else, I guess, and Dan Tyler is here as well, but he was just going to support from the stands, I see. So, and Pete Lynch, Assistant DPW Director. These folks, as well as a number of other staff, have been working really hard in a great team effort, and I appreciate their willingness to reconsider the parking system, work with the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance, and other really interested folks to come up with a quite interesting set of recommendations for the Select Board tonight. And I think that this will be a great step forward if you're interested in pursuing any of these for kind of relieving some of the concerns that we've heard from the community about the parking system. So I would, with that, I would turn it over to Assistant Chief Evans.
Good evening. Jeremy Evans, I'm Assistant Police Chief, if anyone doesn't know. And the reason I'm here is because the police department is now overseeing parking again. Which I find interesting because my first day here as a police officer back in 1998, I spent half of it with Cheryl as she walked around doing parking, doing the meters. I had to carry the bucket. So it's interesting that I come full circle here today. So that transition happened somewhat recently. It started when Kim Frost resigned as our finance director, and pretty much finished up once Patrick left, where we completely took over the parking section. So that's why I'm here with you tonight. So tonight we're going to talk about improvements to the system that we have right now. We made significant changes as a town last year, changing to the zone program from the meters and changing some of the parking fees through the select board. Since then, we've received quite a bit of feedback from the community, from merchants, from visitors downtown, and we're looking to make some good changes, I think, to that. DPW has been working extensively on this. Great shout out and appreciation to all their staff, especially Darren, for the work he's done here. And I don't want to duplicate anything that he's going to be telling you, so at this point I'm going to turn it over to Darren.
Thank you. You have that slideshow set. All right, cool. And I'll just tell you when you can go to the next slide. So like Jeremy said, we're 6 months into this new system. And so in that time, we've been getting feedback from both residents and merchants. And we hopefully have some remedies that could, cure those concerns that folks have. Next slide. So just so everyone knows, the parking budget is an enterprise. It's meant to cover all its own operational expenses. We are hoping that can be 100% cost recovery. And so there were some changes that we made. And if you go to the next slide, we'll kind of do a history. So last June 4th, 2024, the Select Board voted to adopt the change to go to a zone-based system from a single meter pole system. And then in June 18th of 2024, they adopted the FY25 budget that had the new parking rates and also the addition to the Sunday enforcement. And then in November 21st of 2024, that's when we were fully implemented the new system and all the single meter poles were removed. Next slide. So our current system is currently made up of 7 zones. The on-street parking is its own zone, with each individual parking lot then being its own zone as well. Those zone names, as some of you know, are Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3, so on and so on. The parking system has 26 operational kiosks around town, and it also has 3 designated long-term parking lots, those being the Brattleboro Transportation Center, High Grove Lot, and Harris Lot. Next slide. When we moved to this new parking system, we introduced 2 more payment methods to our system. First, we had the physically paying at the kiosk. That's basically going to pay at the kiosk with a credit card, coin, or cash. You walk up to the kiosk, put your license plate number in, add the amount of time you want, and then hit complete. It will print your receipt. There's no need to put that receipt on your window anymore, but it gives you that receipt just so you can confirm payment. The next payment method is the text to pay. And you can kind of see in the left image there, a decal that we have around town. So you text a 5-digit number, the word pay. It will then text you back and ask you what zone you are in. You then text the zone that you were in, and then it will send you a link to bring you to a web browser. Some of the issues that we've had with the text to pay, as you can see, it says zone number, and then below it says zone 6. So a lot of individuals who are using the text to pay were thinking that they just needed to text the number 6 for that zone. But realistically, you had to text the word zone and then 6. And the other issue we were having is that there's no space in between the word zone and 6. So if you added a space, it was confusing the whole system and wasn't recognizing Brattleboro. And I will, later on, we'll talk about how some changes will be made to hopefully solve that issue. The last payment method is the Park Smarter app. The Park Smarter app is an app that you download on your phone, and once you have the app downloaded, you can either search, and you can see that image in the right there. You can either search the zone you are looking for, or it's kind of hard to see on the display. There's small green dots within the map area. You can click on the dot, and it will pull up that zone, and then you can click on that to pay in that zone, add your time, license plate number, and go that way. The issue we had with the dots, and those are GPS coordinates basically that we give the vendor, is that there can only be 1 dot per zone. And so, so with the on-street parking being such a unique shape, we had to try to centralize that dot. And so it's hard to see, like I said, but the dot is currently by the works. But as you all know, there's on-street parking on Elliott and Flat. And so that was really confusing to some users. So again, we'll move on further where we'll talk about remedies. I just want to talk about shortly that what's very unique is that when we first talked about moving to this new system, there was a lot of talk about a lot of people wanting to use coin and cash. What we're seeing actually is quite the opposite. There's about only, out of all the transactions per month, we're seeing an average of about 13% of those transactions being coin or cash, with the rest being credit card purchases. So when I say that, it doesn't mean that it's all phone app, but it means that an individual is paying with a credit card either on the app or at the kiosk. And you can go to the next slide. So I just kind of want to give you an idea of where we're at currently with the new system. Again, probably a little hard to see. All the way to the left is April of 2024, and all the way at the right is April of 2025. So these are the total transactions, and that means everything. So any transaction that was done, either card, text, app. And so you'll see that when we had the old system, we had a very high number of transactions, and that large drop you see is November. That's when we first moved over. Kind of stayed plateau there for a little bit, and then in March and April, we started to come up a little bit. Realistically, a lot of people would look at this and say, well, no one's parking anymore. It's not true. So back with the old system, anytime anyone fed the meter with coins, it was a transaction that was recognizing. So we don't have a lot more of that go back, feed the meter to keep your hours fed. And so that's why you had such a high transaction number back then compared to now. But the good news is that we're looking at is we see an upward trend, especially coming into summer. And so that's positive. We really won't see really great data until we get through summer. And so we'll be keeping our eyes on that. You can go to the next slide. This is basically the same type, but it's our total revenue. And so all the way to the left is January 2024. All the way to the right is April 2025. As you can see, in the 2024 era, basically kind of stayed plateaued, kind of go up and down. And there's that very large spike. That would be November, where we're making that transition. We had free parking for a short period of time while we made that transition, so revenue dropped quite a bit. But ever since the new system has been implemented, it has gone up. Yes, the majority of that is probably from the rate increase, but that was the purpose of this, right? We wanted to make that enterprise be 100% cost recovery, and so we implemented these new rates. You can see in March, which is the second to last number from the right, has been our highest revenue within the last year, and that was $40,409 we made in the month of March just on parking, or paying for parking. That doesn't include permits, tickets, any of that. So this is just for people paying for parking. So it was $40,000 we made in the month of March. The only reason it went down slightly in April is because there was one extra day in March than in April, and we're basically generating a little over $1,000 a day, and that difference is basically $1,000. So that's not that it really dropped that much. It was just we had one extra day in March, and so you can go to the next slide. So with this system, we've been getting some feedback. We worked with the DBA, with talking with merchants and their concerns. We've gotten feedback from residents with emails. So these are just some of the concerns that folks have brought back to us. The first is just the challenge of changing to a new system. So, just like everything, learning a whole new system, it can be challenging, and we heard the frustration with that. Second would be the kiosks are hard to find and complex to use. So regardless, and this kind of falls back to the one just below it, would be lack of signage. Regardless if we make changes or not, it's already on DPW's plan to add more signage around town to hopefully help individuals find kiosks and how to operate the kiosk. Seth actually made a great sticker that we have added to the side of kiosks, which gives you step directions on how to use those kiosks. Down below there, like we've talked about, Brattleboro zones are hard to find on both mobile payment apps. And so I will speak further on that one, just a short period here, and then accessibility, and I'll speak a little bit on that here in a second. And you can go to the next slide. So what I'm going to do actually, Seth, is I'll have you come back to this. I'm going to see this, if you can go to the next slide, which is actually the zone changes. So these are the recommendations that we're bringing to the select board that hopefully will help solve some of these issues and concerns we're having. The first biggest one is reconfiguring the zones. It seems like a lot. It seems like it'd be, a headache for most. But as Patrick Moreland said, it's like ripping the Band-Aid off. We're going to have to do it to hopefully resolve some of these issues. So as you can see, the biggest change we made is basically trying to correspond the parking lot that it's the street that it's tied to. So for an example, Preston lot would then be attached to Flat Street, and that would be one full zone. Harmony would be with Elliott and Church, and High Grove with High Street. Main Street would remain its own zone, with the only exception to Grove, just because it's only got about 3 spots and it's kind of its unique area. Harris and Depot would see no changes, and also the Brattleboro Transportation Center would see no changes. When we make these changes, it will be, we have to mirror the rates and time limitations from the street to the parking lot. So currently all the on-street parking is $1.50 an hour, and so is Harmony Lot and Preston Lot. The only one that has a huge significant change would be High Street and High Grove. So High Grove is currently a long-term parking lot, so it's at a 55 cents an hour rate, where High Street is at $1.50. Those have to, and High Grove also has a 10-hour limitation, where High Street only has a 2-hour limitation, I believe. 3 hours, sorry. No, 2, sorry. So that's the biggest one that we need to have to discuss. After we've had talks with conversations with folks, our recommendation is to turn High Street into the same rate as High Grove currently. So High Street parking, which hosts about 11 spots, I believe, would become 55 cents an hour at a 10-hour limitation. The reason we thought that was the best remedy is because High Grove has become kind of a new, a lot of people are parking there than usual. This has come because of some occurrence with the transportation center, but we've seen a lot more parking in that lot. And the distance between High Street and High Grove is pretty similar, so we felt that could be that rate, and it really isn't a huge difference. One of the biggest concerns that was brought forward was High Street is almost the entryway to Brattleboro. We'd like to have quick turnover, and we just felt that it would be better at the 55 cents for a 10-hour limitation, but it can also be changed at your guys' discretion if you'd like it to be. They just have to mirror each other. The next big change would be the actual zone names. So currently, our zones are Zone 1, Zone 2. Our recommendation is to change the zones to a numerical-only number. IPS, who is the vendor for our type of payment method that we go through, had asked us to come up with a unique number for Brattleboro, something that only Brattleboro residents would use and no one else would use in the country. So I thought, why not the zip code, right? So basically, I thought that our Zone 1, which is currently our Main Street, would be 05301. With the only, you can go back a slide, that might help. So Main Street would be 05301, High Street and High Grove would be 05302, and so on and so on. The only really thing is you're seeing here is the last digit in there is basically the same zone number it is now. So this is going to help really solve the issue of text to pay and finding that zone. Now it only being a numerical number, it just kind of makes it more clear what zone number you're going to type in and not needing to type in that word zone. That's been the biggest challenge. And the other issue is that the app that the enforcement uses, T2, has some issues seeing the zone names if they're not strictly numerical. And so that is another reason why we moved. Hopefully, will move to a numerical-only zone number. The last big change also is we currently host 2 spare kiosks at DPW. Those are supposed to be for in case one of the kiosks in town gets damaged and needs to be repaired quickly. Our hope is to add those kiosks under your consideration, add those kiosks right away, get those implemented and into the infrastructure to help individuals that can find a kiosk. One of the biggest things was walking distance between a parking space and a kiosk. And so the areas that we would like to add those kiosks are by Peter Havens on Elliott Street and also on the east side of Main Street by Key Bank. And then if you can go 2 slides. Lastly, these are further recommendations that you all would have to consider that were other issues that were brought forward to us. They would all need to be ordinance amendments or changes, and so they're not within a motion today, but if you were to ask us to look into this further, we could bring back information. So a big one that the merchants have brought forward to us is Sunday parking. Sunday parking was brought forward because it needed to help generate revenue to make sure the parking budget wasn't in a deficit no longer. But a lot of the merchants felt like Sunday parking, giving it free, was a great opportunity for people to come to town, park for free, and go shopping. One way we felt that we could possibly remedy this issue is that if we gave Sunday back to free parking, we would add additional 2 hours to Monday through Saturday. And so we'd add additional 2 hours of enforcement, hopefully to recoup some of that revenue. Currently, Sundays are bringing us in about $3,600 a month in revenue. And so losing that altogether would be slightly an issue, and so we would like to add 2 hours through Monday through Saturday. Next would be implementing a formal violations appeal process. Currently, within our ordinance, it states that an individual who wants to appeals a ticket just has to bring down something in writing. There's no actual form. And so we would like to implement a formal form that can be found online to make it easier for the user, and also gives the staff time to really just take a look at the appeal, kind of get the information they need, and make the right decision on whether they should approve the appeal or deny the appeal. Next, which is another one big from the merchants, is to create an easier permit purchase process. Currently, we don't have a great process online. We sell permit parking quarterly and annually, and they're looking to add something more on a monthly basis. So we could bring in back some ideas. They're looking for a way that employers can find, maybe get permits for employees to park at night, and really not have to pay the meter the whole time they're at their shift. And then lastly was to institute loading zones that are strictly loading zones. Currently, we have some of those, but some of the loading zones within downtown coincide with paid parking spaces. So, and the hours kind of flex on each one. But for example, there'll be a loading zone that is only loading only from 6:30 in the morning till 11 at night, and then or 11 in the morning, and then after 11, it's paid parking. The issue is, back when we had meters, we could bag those spots, and then the individual would know, I can't park there at this time. Well, now that we have no meters, enforcement has had issues with really showing those locations as permit parking or loading parking during those hours, and they've had to write a bunch of tickets for those. So if we could create actual loading zones that are strictly loading only, yes, we would lose a spot or two, but it would also give merchants an area for deliveries all through the days, or all day long. So with that, we'll take any questions that you have.
John.
Liz, I might thank you, Darren. That's a really great presentation. So that the thing, what the board might want to consider is, asking questions about any and all of this. Then I would suggest that you focus on the recommended motions, which are things that we could implement tomorrow if you wanted to move forward with them tonight. We don't have to, but if you wanted to, and then have a third conversation about the further considerations, these things that are up on the screen right now, to see if you want us to bring back any ordinance for those, but that's really, we don't really need a motion on that. We just kind of need head nod on which, if any, of those you would like to see us do further work on.
Great. Thank you, John. Before we get to the select board questions and public comments, I'd like to ask Kate Traskus if she has any comments, because I understand that her agency was very much involved in this. So, Kate?
Thanks, Liz. I think Darren did a great job. He came, actually the whole crew, came to a meeting at DBA and spoke with all of the merchants. I think that it was great that they really felt heard and listened to. We recognized that it was a bumpy rollout. And so I think that the zone change to the numbers makes total sense. Allowing merchants, well, this is for later, but allowing merchants to have a way to get their employees who are hourly some kind of parking would be great. Sundays, absolutely. And the zones. So one of the things that you see is that if someone parks, say on Elliott Street, depending on where they park, if they don't see the kiosk, they look across and they see the one in Harmony Lot. So they walk over there, there's the kiosk, they pay, but it doesn't match the spot where they are. So they get a ticket. So this zone change, I think, also makes a lot of sense just for an intuitive kind of experience parking.
Great. Thank you very much.
Could I ask Kate a quick question? Sure. Kate, I'm just curious, what's the general tenor of the feedback from the downtown merchants? Is it like a lot of us are really unhappy, or was it sort of, there's rough spots that can be ironed out? Like, I guess, is there sort of widespread dissatisfaction with the mechanics of the system as a whole, or are people just have suggestions and ways to make it better?
I think the initial response was, this is terrible, we hate it. I think that as they're learning to use it and feeling more confident themselves, we've talked about the DBA also created a reel that we put on social media, going step by step, showing people how to use the kiosks. One piece that they also talk about is that some of their customers who are older have difficulty walking far to the kiosk, from their car back to their car, that kind of thing. So the accessibility piece, I think you were going to.
So that would be us adding additional kiosks to especially the Main Street area. And then on top of that, which I didn't really touch base in, is that within the capital plan, there's money allotted for purchasing new kiosks that you guys signed off on or adopted last June. So there is capital planning, and it is hoped that we would purchase more kiosks to, one, have some additional spares, but also add additional kiosks in the future for the downtown. So our hope is to take those two that we have now, get them implemented right away to kind of close those gaps of long-distance walking.
Thank you, Darren. Okay. Thank you very much, Kate. All right, let's talk first about these potential motions A through E, and let's start with the select board. Does anyone have any comments about those measures?
Where would some general questions for Darren best fit in this?
Right now.
Okay. Well, I have some.
Unless you want a motion.
Does someone you want to make a motion and then ask your questions?
I'm not sure.
Do we want to? Are we going to tackle this?
We're going to
A,
do
B, C.
We're going to go A through E.
Yeah.
General all together.
All together.
Then we're going to discuss the 5 potentials after we've been through the whole motion. It would be a second bite.
Conversation.
Yeah. Does anyone want to prepare a motion for A through E?
I mean, I'll make the motion. So I'm just
Thank
reading
you.
this whole thing.
Yeah.
So I'll motion to accept reconfiguring the zones so that parking lots and the corresponding streets become a single zone. B, to accept changing zone names to numerical format only. C, to adopt changes to the rate and time limitations on High Street to mirror Highgrove. D, to adopt changes to time limitations on Elliott and Flat Street. E, to accept the addition of 2 kiosks in our parking infrastructure that are currently allocated as spares.
Great. Okay, Oscar, you want to ask your questions?
You go first. I just.
Oh, okay, great. I had some just simple questions. So, time frame for the extra 2 hours on the weekdays? When would how late would it go?
So that would be part of the future consideration.
Yeah.
That would be.
So you don't want future
We're going to talk
consideration
about
questions?
the motion items
Got it.
first.
Okay.
So anyone who has anyone on the select board who has questions about the items A through E. Oscar, do you have questions?
Did you have?
This might be in the future considerations category because it wasn't
Okay.
in there. All right.
Okay.
Well, I have some general questions that I think would affect my feelings about the motions. Does that?
That would be great.
Okay. So it's just an absolute limitation of the software that one zone gets 1 dot, right? There's no way to have it be represented as an area or, okay. Okay, that makes sense. I was going to ask about combining zones with the same rate, but it sounds like the point of splitting them is to have more dots.
Yeah,
more accurate dots.
and one really important thing I apologize I forgot to talk about is that the kiosks also can be only assigned to one zone. When we first initially put this in place, we thought that an individual would be able to walk up to any kiosk, type in the zone number, and then pay, put their plate number in and pay. That's not the case. So the kiosk I use as an example every time is there's a kiosk on High Street at the entrance of Highgrove that can only actually be used for on-street parking. So as an individual goes parks in Highgrove, they see that one at the entrance. They think they can pay at there, so they pay. What happens is enforcement goes into Highgrove to enforce. They don't see the plate number because they're technically paid on the on-street parking and not Highgrove. So by reconfiguring these zones, now it allows an individual, let's say if they park in Highgrove, to either use any kiosk in Highgrove or any kiosk in High Street. Same with Harmony and Elliott. Like if you park on Elliott Street and you see the kiosk in Harmony, you can now walk over and pay at the kiosk in Harmony, which you weren't allowed to do with the current system. So,
okay, that makes sense. We're talking about changing the rates. I know that the expectation was that we would run a deficit in FY25 of 110,000. I can't remember exactly. I feel like the actuals we saw were sort of strange. That fee revenue was down, but fines were up. I'm wondering if we have. I'm wondering how we're running compared to those projections. I know it's projected to be a deficit, but are we on track for that deficit or something else?
So in areas, certain areas, yes, and certain areas, no. We're working on the budget for the proposed FY26 budget, which we are bringing forward at the next select board meeting, I believe, and could definitely give a more accurate answer, if that will help.
Sure. And then my only other question, do you know the cost of a kiosk, roughly?
Around $7,000.
Okay, great. All right, all done.
All right. Are there more select board members who have questions about A through E?
Well, I have general questions and specific ones.
All right.
So first of all, thank you so much for soliciting feedback, taking it, summarizing it, and making some recommendations for moving forward. Really appreciate that. Parking is something that we've heard quite a bit about from members of the public in conversations on the street. So if you could just catch me and maybe a couple of others here up to speed, what is the purpose of having an enterprise parking system? Like, why are we charging for parking if it's just barely covering the cost of running the system? Is that something that you could?
Well,
Go ahead.
The parking system isn't just, it has a lot of assets to it. You got to think of all the parking lots that we have that is part of this enterprise. So it has assets that it needs improvements and maintenance on. And so, yes, it has run deficit, but the hope is that it won't. We need to start worrying about capital planning. We talk about resurfacing on some of these pavement resurfacing on these parking lots. It's a huge cost. And if it's not created by revenue from parking, it's then going to come out of the general fund, which is then going to add a cost to that budget. So the hope is to make this a profitable revenue and really fund these capital assets that we need to improve.
John, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add to that last year when the board was looking at options for the parking system, they considered, what about if we didn't enforce parking, we just let anyone park wherever they want for however long they want, and they decided that would not be beneficial to the town because you would have a lot of people occupying space and there wouldn't be a lot of turnover and things like that. So you'd still need to have employees that would enforce time limits, and so paying for those employees takes revenue, so it would mean you'd have to shift over to the general fund to pay for stuff like that, and in addition to like the maintenance issues that Darren was talking about. So really it was, as an enterprise fund, we believe we can make it profitable, make it pay for itself, and if you didn't have paid parking, then you would have costs that we would have to cover.
And less orderliness.
And what is the purpose? What was the purpose of implementing this new system? In terms of what was the concern and what was the anticipated benefit?
Yeah, I think the biggest concern was that we had a enterprise that was in a deficit. So we looked at why we were having that deficit. One of the main things that came up with staff was that we were having large issues with the single pole meters. When I say issues, being damaged, stolen, malfunctioning, not working. And so every time you had a meter that couldn't receive any revenue, you were losing revenue. And so this was a system that we looked at that a lot of other towns have been moving to. And yes, it had its challenges, but we hope that it can one day be a great system that everyone can use and be profitable.
We also, I think, one of the reasons we did this was because it was paid for through a grant. So it made entering into this kind of ripping off of the Band-Aid a little bit less painful.
Anything you wanted to add, John?
Nope, that was just the point I was going to make.
Do you have any more questions, Isaac?
Yeah, just curious about the possibility of piloting or testing some of these potential changes. So some of these just seem to me really easy, pretty straightforward and logical, like adopting the rate and time limitations on High Street to mirror High Grove, and basically C, D, and E, adopting changes to time limitations on Elliott and Flat, and then accepting the addition of 2 kiosks. Those seem pretty straightforward. For the first 2 items, I was curious if you had considered maybe trying this out just to test it and getting some user feedback before rolling it out. And also if some of these issues might be addressed just by signage. So for instance, the Zone 1 thing, it was actually last week I think I mentioned I'm still having trouble with getting Burlingame, California up instead of Brattleboro on the phone. And it was, my godfather heard me through the live stream of this and told me, actually this is what you just need to take out the space. And so if there was a sign saying no space, just putting exactly a Zone 1 with no space, that probably would do the trick too. And just curious if around, you mentioned the more signage and directions, and I thought that's a great idea, and was just curious about the timeline for that.
Timeline for the signage basically would kind of stem off today. If the changes were to be made, we need to get the material together to make those changes, and if not, we would probably start. If no changes were made, we would just start adding additional signage pretty soon. A pilot program, we didn't really think about that. We definitely can, but when we look at this system, it's just to get it right across the board and really, like we say, rip that Band-Aid off. You're always going to have visitors from out of town who are going to say they don't see the signage, and hopefully by making these changes to the zone name and really the configurations of the zones themselves are hopefully going to create a better process for both tourists, residents, and people coming downtown to shop. So yeah, I guess we could look into if that was something you guys wanted to consider.
Also, the alphanumeric has been causing issues with
The
the software.
enforcement. Yep.
Yep.
So that's why we wanted to switch
With
to the
enforcement.
just the numbers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Isaac, are you complete? Peter, do you have questions?
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm trying to go through in my head how many on-street parking spaces there are up High Street. I'm counting about 10 to 15 in my head.
I believe it's around 13.
13.
Carol Cologne would know that right at the top of her head, but I'm sorry, I don't.
That's all right. And is there a reason why, and I understand some of the sensitivity to having those spaces turn over faster, is it unrealistic to bend those into Main Street, into a Main Street zone?
We had that conversation actually quite a bit. We talked about that amongst ourselves, and also I think we had some conversations with some merchants. It really just, we talked about the High Street becoming part of On Street, and it really just kind of went against the whole philosophy of, like, the parking lot is tied to the street.
Yeah.
And then the problem of the kiosks, right? If we now make this On Street, we still have the dilemma of people coming out of High Grove thinking they can pay at that entrance kiosk. And so we mirrored those two zones again. That is something you guys could consider on changing if you'd like. The other thing I'd like to add is that you guys the ordinance got changed. And so if you were to decide on a rate and time limitation now and some period down the time wanted to change it, it doesn't have to be changed within the ordinance, I believe. I believe you guys can just make a motion and change that during any select board meeting or when it's on the agenda, basically.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna make a motion based on an earlier conversation, but I guess this is not the time to do that, so we'll do that. I guess, yeah, geographically, visually, I guess that makes sense. Have we run any numbers like as to what that might end up costing us? Because we're going to be renting those spots out for 2/3 less than.
Are you talking about High Street, just the south?
Yeah,
Yep.
High Street.
So we looked at that, and the data that we get, it was hard to really determine if they were on High Street because right now it's all on Street.
Right.
But we basically kind of dug into it a little bit, and it really wasn't a huge difference on the change because I can't remember why. I wish I had that number on top of me, and I guess we could bring it back. But I remember looking at that, and it wasn't a huge difference in cost, like losing by switching those to 55 cents. And we weren't really, they're not full parking spots 24 hours or through those enforcement hours. So
yeah, I mean, I was just curious if you had like a quick number. I can't imagine that the change would be that costly to the town. Otherwise, I like these suggestions. I know that, having a shop downtown, I sure do have lots of people come in and ask me how to park their vehicle, and they're often not happy when they're doing it.
Yeah.
But change is good right up until it happens, right?
Yep.
So I'm I think like going to the zip code thing, even though I think that will present its own confusion. As I pulled up, I just pulled the app up, and I noticed when I touch a green dot, two zones will pop up. One zone that's upper and lowercase with a space and a 1, and one that's all uppercase and a 1. So, I mean, but I've been using the app since the town adopted it. So, I'm real familiar with it, and it's easy for me to navigate. And that's basically how I direct people how to park downtown. So I have not had any experience with having to type that in, but I think if we do eliminate that, just going to a straight numeric or just is probably the way to go. So I think that's a pretty good suggestion.
Yep, and the other thing is you can see as these maps are color-coded, and so with the decals that we're going to put on the signage, they will match the color code of this map, and these maps hopefully will be displayed around town. So if you see the yellow Main Street, you're going to see on your sign a backdrop of yellow with 05301, so hopefully we can distinguish, oh, hey, yellow, I'm in this zone, and it's
Should've led with
05301. Huh?
You should have led with that one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Okay, so I just have a couple things. First, Darren, I want to thank you for being responsible for this and taking it over for Patrick and having so much information at your fingertips. It's really great, and all your investigations. So all the things that you said about the kiosks themselves don't apply when you have the app. When you're on the app, you can just go anywhere, go to any zone and pay for your parking.
That's correct.
And I am in favor generally of all these things being done at once, Band-Aids being what they are, and having fewer sets of changes. And with that, let me open it up to the public.
May I say one thing?
Sure.
Too? Yeah, so this is tagging on to what Isaac said, and thank you, because this is great. This is like game time.
Yeah.
Like, this makes sense. Business cards, this is a Kate thing too. Business cards or flyers, like I think of the New York City subway, right? Like that businesses could have for people to pick up, or even merch, like a T-shirt with the colors. And maybe we have like a parking gallery walk where it's just like, let's go. Like, this is where we park. Like, and just really wrap around what you've done, because I think it's brilliant. It's great.
One thing we talked with the merchants is there's the decals, which basically show like the text to pay and Park Smarter. We actually have quite a bit of those, and we could offer. We talked about giving them to some of the merchants where they could stick on their doors or windows. And so if someone came, or even inside the shop, right? And so if someone came in and said, "Hey, how do I pay? I need help." You're like, "Check this big decal. It's a 7x7 each one." So, and it could help store owners kind of show the public how to use the parking. So,
Yep. Or even the high school, like, you know, the DMV, get them on a water bottle, like just really, I think it'd be fun. It's going to be great.
That's great.
On the subject of signage, I think this actually fits better here, but I think we should, given still, I see a lot of people sort of visibly struggling, I think we should consider just, someone laughed when I suggested this, but I think it's a reasonable idea. We should consider just sticking one of our banners across Main Street that says, we have a new pay-by-plate system, go to brattleboro.gov/parking, Park Smarter app on App Store, something like that, just so you can't miss that if you're driving into town. So I think that might be an interesting option for signage.
Okay.
Can I just point out just something completely? So even before the meters were taken out, people were still complaining about those. So I don't, they didn't work. The credit cards didn't work. You couldn't read them, whatever. So I mean, this is a direction in which we are going. It's unavoidable. I park in Keene, I park in Greenfield, I park in New York City, and it's all app driven. And a lot of these places don't even give you an option to pay by cash. I will say that the kiosks do often. I see the number one complaint that I get downtown is that the credit cards don't. The people struggle with it. And I've gone out and I've literally paid for parking myself using my credit card, and I have not had a problem. So I don't know if there's, so you're welcome.
Okay, so before we get to the public, I just want to clarify, Peter, when you say you help people park, you don't go out and parallel park for them. You help them with the meter.
I did one time. she was struggling really bad, though.
Okay. Well, we've had some people online raise their hand first, so let's go to them.
Okay, we're going to start with Bonnie.
Hi.
Honey.
Hi, guys. So I'm not opposed to, and I'm impressed with what you're doing. Let's see. I'm getting all kinds of questions on my computer. Okay, so here I am.
What's your name, please?
Bonnie Gervin, District 8. I'm calling out of concern for the parking that happens in front of Center Congregational Church on Sundays. So if indeed you don't drop Sunday parking, in the past when they were single meters, we had little covers we could put over 3 of the meters. We have people that come to church that are elderly, that, need the ramp. That is the only location where we have a ramp to get into the building. So I'm wondering if there's a way what we can do with that. I thought maybe a couple handicap spots, but not everyone is necessarily handicapped. We also have memorial services where we like to accommodate people that are coming to do a memorial service, that are mourning. We don't have our own parking lot in the back, and in the back we don't have an elevator, so we need access to the ramp. So I don't know what the solution is. We're not a loading zone, that's for sure. But it would be great if there could be some accommodations for a few spaces on Sunday in front of our church. So I don't know what you guys can come up with. Okay.
Gentlemen, do you have any solutions for this?
Yeah, I guess one of the questions, and please reach out to either Carol Colomb or myself later on about this, is it was a past practice. We do offer renting spaces out with a fee, but I don't know if it's a past practice that we block those spots off for Sunday service or not. I'm sure there's something we could help work out.
Well, I'm sure that you can talk offline and have that answered. And hopefully, when we get to the next topic, we'll take care of the Sunday issue. Fidel?
David Levenbach, I'm assuming.
C'est moi. Thank you. 2 things. Number one, David Levenbach, I'm sorry, District 9. This question about High and High Grove, I think the proposal makes sense because there's a gap where there's no parking between Main Street and the bottom of High Street. So making that consistent with High Street, I think it's a bad idea. Second thing if I understood Mr. Evans-Frahn's suggestion about piloting, I would discourage you from piloting the naming of the zone changes, because if you have 2 different systems for indicating zone, that's certainly going to confuse people. So I think if you're going to make the change, make it all at once for all zones. Thank you. And I'll be back for the second part of this.
I will look forward to it. Steve? Hi, Steve.
Hi. You know what? After raising my hand, I just answered. Steve Peterson, District 7. After I raised my hands, I answered my own question, so I'll close.
Favorite thing, so thank you. Mr. DeGray, did you have a comment?
Well, first and foremost, I want to commend the town to changing the system to what it is today. The parking meters that we had were, a lot of them were broken. The poles were bent over. And I'm a believer, if you want to attract people to your town, you want to look attractive. And we didn't look very attractive. Also, it was a real impediment to snow removal, especially downtown. And if you're a merchant, getting the streets plowed when they were doing snow removal with the old parking system was quite difficult. As I was looking at this and the changes that you want to make and the color coding that you did, is there any way that we could paint the kiosk to match the color of the what I'm looking at here, this map? And actually, it would probably make those kiosks a lot easier to find and stick out. And so that would be a lot easier for you to also figure out what zone you're in.
Mr. DeGray, I think Darren said something along those lines, at least with stickers or something like that.
The stickers were for the signage, but I think that it's actually a good idea. We could add, I know the top part of the kiosk we can't cover because they're actually solar panels, but we could add some sort of color coordination on the side or back or fit.
Simple vinyl wrap.
Piece of sharp stick in the eye.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else in person would like to speak? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion of the select board on just the motion, and then we'll get to the extra items? Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, when I say pilot, I'm not it could be as simple as one day. You try with one of those zip codes in an area and see what people's experience are, if they have any challenges, and then be able to incorporate that for rolling it out across the town. I used to do quality improvement as my profession. This was the concept that you do things incrementally, kind of test things and get feedback from users before we roll out a system change. Because what I would hate is that in the process of our compensating for the challenges, or that we create a whole bunch of new challenges that we don't know what they are. And for instance, I'm just thinking, when I first saw the zip codes, I thought, oh, this is based on the zip code of Main Street, 05302, and then, or 05301, and then I can imagine people saying 05305. I'm not parked in 05305. This is 05302. You just think that it would be worthwhile getting some feedback from people who, or taking the proposal to a few different people who park downtown and say, hey, would this make sense to you? Can you try this out?
Well, that's an interesting idea, and I think that what the town staff will tell you is that initially everybody hates everything. So let's just go with what we think will work. But I'm open to suggestions. Does anyone want to discuss that motion further?
Go ahead.
I think that we can vote to approve this and then let the town staff figure out how best you want to roll it out. But just wherever there's opportunity to solicit user feedback, I think you can do that.
Yeah, if you vote on this today, there'll still be a short period of time where we need to get some things in line. We'd have to order the decals, wait for them to come in, and then we would have to we would do a large press release basically on when these changes would be implemented. I'm not saying it would. We hope to have them all changed before we get really in the depth of summer. So, but we hope to do. We talked with IPS on a lot about this, and we feel that the numerical only zone name is really going to help a lot of the issues. And so if a pilot program is something that is desired, we can certainly do that. But we feel that the best practice will be to basically make these changes that can be done in one day, because we'll be able to come in, knock them all out, get all the signs re-signed, and inform the public of that day change, and then go back to normal operations the day after. So that is the hope, but we're willing to look at other options.
Thank you, Darren. All right, are there any more comments? Yes.
Just, is it correct to say that for C and D, where we're changing the rate and time limitations, it's only going in the easier direction? Like High Street is going to a cheaper price and a longer time duration. Are there any examples of those where it's becoming more restrictive or more expensive in these proposals?
The only other changes that you will be seeing will be Zone 3 and 5, where the rates are currently the same, but the time limitation's not. So, for example, Harmony is currently 3-hour parking, and Elliott is 2. And we are going to mirror those to be 3-hour parking.
Okay, so it gets less restrictive. Okay, awesome.
Okay. Are we ready to act on the motion that Peter has put on the floor?
Yes.
Great. All select board members in favor of accepting the motion to accept reconfiguring the zones so that parking lots and the corresponding streets become a single zone. B, to accept changing zone names to a numerical format only. C, to adopt changes to the rate and time limitations on High Street to mirror High Grove. D, to adopt changes to time limitations on Elliott and Flat Street. And E, to accept the addition of 2 kiosks to our parking infrastructure that are currently allocated as spares. Okay, Select Board, all in favor of these items in this motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Great, that passes 5-0. And Yes?
Would this be an appropriate time now? I was going to suggest a motion unto its own that I think we can.
Yeah, you want to go
institute
right into the next section that we're discussing, you mean?
Or is this
Further
is new,
considerations.
right?
Exploring the new issues.
Well, I mean, I think you're suggesting a motion that's not in the materials, right?
tonight? Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah. So, I know that along with all the other complaints that we received while rolling this thing out, and that the biggest complaint that I heard as a merchant downtown had to deal with the Sunday parking. And I think you'd suggested adding 2 hours Monday through Saturday, and going back to free parking on Sunday. So if the chair thinks it's appropriate, I would like to make that motion as something that maybe we can pass.
Well, yes, but I'm thinking we can have 5 different items, because there's 5 different items that Darren was suggesting that are in this memo. John, did you want to do
and
one at a time?
All of these things we would need to bring back ordinance changes to you, so we would need a motion on those ordinance changes anyway. So I think really what Darren and the team was looking for was, should we put together the staff work to bring these things back, or would you say, slow down on one of these, or don't do one of these? That would be helpful, because then we wouldn't have to work on it.
So
John,
that's
really the question.
You're looking for nodding approval.
I think that's
to
probably all we need
items.
tonight, but, it's up to you. If you want to make
Okay,
it a
great.
motion, that would be helpful.
Well,
as
yeah,
well.
I mean, if it's I was literally hoping, as I understood it, that this would be something in this context that I could make a motion and we could roll out as soon as this Sunday.
I think that's
the problem. Yeah,
that's a bit extreme. I think
Well,
staff needs time.
Have you met me?
Yes, and that's why I say, Peter, I think that's a bit extreme, and we should let the staff work their work and bring something back to us. But I do register your enthusiasm for the Sunday change, and I wondered if the rest of the board concurred.
I'll weigh in. I think it's a great idea. I think it would solve a lot of issues. The one question I have is how much longer would the weekdays be? Because there was talk about adding 2 hours.
That was the recommendation that staff was proposing, was adding 2 hours additionally onto what we currently have.
So that's in the morning or in the evening, or
In the
on
evening.
either end?
2 in the evening.
So so it'd be 8 p.m. rather than 6 p.m.?
That is correct.
Would you consider adding 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening?
The reason we put the addition of hours in the evening is because we really need to recoup that revenue that we would lose on Sunday, and you will probably not generate quite a bit of parking revenue in the morning.
Nobody's coming early in the morning unless they're delivering stuff.
I can tell you firsthand, as somebody who's downtown at as early as 7 to 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm fighting with one other guy for all those spaces. So.
Right.
Okay, so, yeah. So,
Other comments on the Sunday?
yeah, I mean, I think adding the 2 hours in the evening it's reasonable. It's kind of a lot, but if you could make it 1 hour, that would be nice, but,
Well, am I correct in assuming that if the numbers worked out at 1 hour, you'd leave it at 1 hour, but if you need the second hour, you would employ it?
Yeah, I definitely could bring back some better numbers that would show what an hour would bring and what 2 hours could possibly bring.
Thank you. Oscar, did you have comments? This is the Sunday we're talking about.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Just a procedural question. Are these all things, ordinance things, where we have to have first reading, second reading, all that sort of stuff?
Yes.
Okay, so.
And then there's a 6-week period after that. So.
Okay, so this stuff is going to take a little while no matter what we do today. Yep. Okay, yeah, no, makes sense.
Yes, Isaac.
So when I was talking to downtown business owners about the parking, what I heard was actually people saying there were mixed sentiments about the Sunday parking, because on the one hand, while it was just some customers were complaining about it, there was also the benefit that residents weren't taking advantage of free parking and then clogging up the Main Street parking spots that, like people who live on Main Street, and instead keeping it open for people who were coming to shop by having a fee for the parking. So it kept from people from parking all day there who lived upstairs when it was free. The other thing is that the thing that I saw from your presentation and what I have experienced and heard from others is just partly it's that change is hard and people don't like being slapped with a fee that they didn't have before. And I wonder if after 6 months, if there's some shift and there might be starting to be some acceptance of that, the Sunday cost. And I also wonder if now suddenly we're charging in the evenings, if you won't get some pushback on people having to pay in the evenings, because I think people just don't want to pay. But what we've learned is you actually need that revenue. And so shifting it around from one day to the other, I'm curious if you've done any sort of and I'm not, if you haven't done this polling, I don't hold it against you because I know you have a lot of other work that you have to do. But, have you gotten feedback from people saying, yes, we'd rather pay in the evenings than pay on Sundays?
So, to answer a couple of things, we did a lot of reach out with the DBA. Kate was great to do a thread with a lot of the merchants, which she then gave in that information back. A lot of those merchants talked about having Sunday back. The one thing I can say is it wasn't till way later that we really threw the idea at 2 hours, so we haven't got a whole lot of feedback from individuals because we just recently had that conversation. And I forget the first thing I was going to say, but if you had another question that I didn't answer, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Okay, great. Has everyone here spoken about their comments on the Sunday? Yes?
My only thought, Isaac, is that because we're going to have this longer sort of ordinance-style process, we'll probably get more of a chance than usual there'll be multiple meetings for people to show up and give their thoughts, so we may at least get some chance there.
And, my thoughts are that I like adding the 2 hours during the week and giving Sunday as a day of rest, just because I'm a traditionalist. Let's start with Dick.
So when we had this discussion, Dick DeGray, District 8, we had this discussion before. I was a strong advocate of parking on Sunday. My 28 years of being on Main Street, all those spaces, as Isaac was talking about, they get filled up at Saturday night after 6 o'clock, and they don't have to be out of their parking places until 9 o'clock on Monday morning. Most of the people that complained about the parking on Sunday are local people. They're not the tourists that come to town that support the businesses downtown. Now, I would remind you also that it's an enterprise fund, and an enterprise fund that has suffered greatly in the last few years. You lost $100,000 of revenue in the transportation center that you haven't figured out how to make up yet. And so taking $46,000, which is what Sunday, or $43,000, what Sunday parking is presently bringing in, and you're going to add 2 hours Monday through Saturday. Well, the only two nights that there's a lot of people downtown are Friday and Saturday. All the stores close at 6 o'clock when our parking system is done. So we're going to have 2 hours of parking with no cars downtown. How much revenue do you think that's going to bring in? And probably not going to have enforcement. So I think it's a really poor idea to add 2 hours and eliminate that Sunday parking. Now, you can go either way. Some people are going to complain about Sunday, but I think it's been very helpful, in my opinion, to businesses downtown not to have those most valuable spots taken up. You can see people driving around that Harmony lot for a half hour waiting for a spot to open up in the Harmony lot. And so when they're limited spaces, because when I would go to work at 9:30 in the morning, that lot was half full, and it didn't empty out all day. And so those valuable lots, if you want to make free parking in High Grove or someplace else, but the lots and the parking on Main Street and that Harmony lot are really valuable to the businesses. and having free parking and taking those spaces away to let the locals take those up that live upstairs downtown. And, you know, again, I'm talking to you about an enterprise fund that needs revenue. Your parking permits are down from the transportation center. Everybody's gone up to the High Grove lot. So eliminating $43,000 of income, and you think you're going to make it up really in 2 nights, I don't think you're going to do that. And I think it would be very short-sighted to eliminate Sunday parking, because I think it's detrimental. I really think it's detrimental to the businesses downtown. Thank you.
Thank you.
Point of information?
Yes.
I assume that we are planning to have enforcement from 6 to 8 if we do this, right?
Yeah, we would generally enforce whenever there is parking. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now. And we're running late, so there'll only be a few more comments.
Nell Mayo, District 8. I guess I would like to note a couple times in past meetings, Susan has recommended lengthening paid hours in Harmony lots because of her observation of cars still being parked in there. When I've asked people about that, and this is just, you know, general people, not people employed by the town, the response has been, well, the enforcement would cost too much because that would be going into overtime. So that's my question is, would this enforcement be going into overtime with the evening hours? And then also, I could see how Sunday enforcement would be overtime. I don't know who actually is doing those patrols, but that's something that immediately came to mind for me.
Yeah, I can.
I also was a bit confused. I know we haven't discussed the loading zones on the select board yet, but I've seen multiple spots in town, like on Elliott Street, for example, or in front of Twice Upon a Time, that are blocked off loading zones. I didn't think you could ever park there. So that was just my personal observation and a bit of confusion. Another bit of confusion is I've gone on the app before and not had to pay on Sundays. I didn't even know we were currently paying on Sundays. That's all.
What's your license plate? I would just, in reply to that, so when the parking staff shifts get changed around so that there is some coverage, you know, throughout the parking period, and that may change day to day. It may be a shift that ranges on Sundays. That's kind of how we address it. It doesn't become an overtime issue. Is that okay?
Okay, Kate. Then I'll go to the screen, and then we have 2 new people, and then I won't allow Fidel because he already talked about this, or no, this is the separate. Okay, very good. Kate, I'm sorry.
Hi, Kate Traskis, District 9. I just wanted to respond to this idea of Sunday. So in my experience, most of the merchants have indicated that they would like to see Sunday go back to free. And I think that we need that for the local population specifically. They tell us over and over, the merchants tell me over and over that they're not seeing local customers coming downtown. So this feels like, you know, making some sort of a concession, right? I think also our restaurants do a great business in the evenings, and oftentimes when I am working in the evenings or are here late for meetings, the parking lots are full. I also think that there's an opportunity with our long-term parking lots, specifically the parking garage, that if we are creative with our permits, for example, we could be working with landlords that, you know, could do a yearly permit that is then paid out with monthly rent. And that becomes, you know, a benefit to folks who can't pay the permit in a lump sum or even quarterly, and then they could park in the garage. So I think that there's different ways that we can look at this to work for people. And I think that's all I want to say.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, Bethany, New, and Fidel.
Hi. Muted? Okay, great, thanks. Hi, Bethany Ranquist, Pretty quick comment. I just wanted to say that we are a town that borders two other decent towns of similar size, Keene and Greenfield. And as we're starting to look at what at like extending our days or Sundays free, I just wanted to throw out there that Keene has parking Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And Greenfield has parking Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Both towns stop at 5 p.m. And Keene's parking is free on Sundays and Greenfield is free all weekend. So I'm not necessarily saying we need to be free all weekend, but if people are looking for going to dinner and a movie, and there are 3 different movie theaters that they could choose from, the Latches, Keene, or Greenfield Garden, they may choose to go elsewhere because the parking is free. Same thing on Saturdays, Sundays, whatnot. I just think that I think that maybe there needs to be a little more cautious consideration before adding more time onto the days that you guys are looking at, because in comparison to the other towns that are around us, I worry that business will just continue to go to those because people will choose that they can do similar small town shopping without the hassle of having to pay extended parking time. Thanks.
Thank you. And I don't know who new is, but you're up.
Hi, it's Alfred New. I'm not sure which district. I wanted to talk to Isaacs and to Dick DeGray's point. The people who live in the apartments downtown means they're parking in a long-term lot or the transportation center. One day a week, they can park close by and bring in their groceries or laundry or anything else they need to do. That doesn't seem unreasonable. I'm personally not a huge fan of not having paid parking on Sunday. And to Bethany's point, both Greenfield and Keene, although Keene is much larger, their parking rates are substantially lower than Brattleboro's. And even though I like the idea of not parking on Sunday, the restaurants have some business after between 6 and 8, but almost every other business closes except for one that I know of, and that's on the weekend. So I don't think you're going to recover a substantial amount of funds by adding those 2 hours on. And I do think locals are going downtown on Sundays, and the extended parking will be not good for the merchants. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, Fidel.
Thank you, David Lindbach, District 9. This may have changed, but there was, remember, these second proposals for online purchases. And traditionally, you had to go to the transportation office to get a permit for the transportation center for like 3 or 5 days if you go out of town. Can that be made available online as well? That we'd get a sticker that we could print off and then put in the car? Because the transportation, you never know if somebody's going to be available in the office. And the other question, I've just been wondering, what is the commission, if that's the appropriate term, that we pay to the company that is providing the parking app? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not sure we have that answer right here on the commission, unless you know that.
No, but we can bring that probably to the FY26 proposed budget. Right. Just we'll have that conversation. And when we talk about the permits, we're talking about streamlining the whole permit process, including the permit that they were just speaking of. So if you are looking to approve or look at options of how to streamline our permit process, which is one of the recommendations at the end here, we would look at monthly, quarterly, employee. We'd look at all different options and bring those back to you.
Great. Okay, so the memo discussed 5 items to explore. The Sunday and the later hours, Monday through Saturday, I'll put together. So let me ask if you would like to consider, Select Board, giving the town manager the nod to continue that exploration and bring that data back to us. Is that something that the three of us want to see explored?
You want a hand
Sunday?
raised?
Yeah, let's raise hands. Okay, very good.
Okay.
All right, now, that leads us to the other three, and let's see if we can speed that up. Let's look at them together. We have, yes?
I guess I would ask the board maybe if there's no objection, we could bring back information on each of these other items, and you could just decide further then. I think the big ones were the ones you just kind of gave us the nod on. The rest are relatively minor and wouldn't take a lot of time, and we could bring it as a package.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Great, and just to state what they are.
Yeah, and I had a couple of questions or
right.
sort of things to explore.
It's the formal appeal process, the monthly parking permit, and the loading zones. Amanda?
So I wanted to discuss the loading zones, just having, being a farmer who delivers vegetables to area, like cafes and stuff. So just, I guess, just learn more what the plan is and have them be ample or a special permit, whatever.
Yes, so
for hours of operation.
So currently, there is some loading zones in town that are strictly loading zones, but there is a few loading zones in the downtown area that are both a loading zone in the morning, and then in the afternoon, it's paid parking spaces. And so the hope is that we could add more strictly only loading zones to the downtown area that don't coincide with both, because we're struggling to enforce, it being a loading zone in the morning and then people parking there, and then we have to ticket and get them moved, and then deliveries are not being made. And so we're hoping to just strictly add a couple more loading zone only spots. We haven't looked at where possibly those locations could be, and that's some of the stuff that we would bring back as we would look further into it, look what the best recommendation would be for those areas. So,
also, smaller vendors don't always have like a box truck that they deliver in. Like I've delivered in my family vehicle and have gotten a ticket because it's like a Volvo station wagon, right? Even though it had like salad greens or whatnot. So whether there's like a sticker or a sign that a loader could either purchase or post so that they don't get that ticket.
Yeah, we could look into something. I would imagine Fish could tell you that he has deliveries come from a different truck every month, so it would be a challenge. But
I'll lend you my clergy sign.
Okay.
All right.
And then the other thing was, besides loading zones, can I just go ahead and throw it out?
Go right ahead.
How about the idea of a senior parking permit?
definitely something we could look into. We're gonna bring back a bunch of ideas that staff's been talking about. So
let me poll the select board. Are we ready to just kind of nod and let the staff come back to us with these 3 items?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Very good. Thank you very much. All right. It's almost 8 o'clock. Let's take a break until 5 after 8. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Well done.
Yeah. All right. Let's discuss the Brattleboro Thrives update. John?
Yep, and so for this, we'll invite Kate Traskus up from the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance.
Great.
And she will give us an update on this project.
And she's accompanied by?
My entourage, yes. I have Neil and Kate also with me, Brattleboro Thrives.
Neil's name is, last name?
Sorry.
Oh, Neil Goldberg.
Thank you.
And
Kate, I think we know you're...
Yeah, Kate O'Connor, I just want to explain, I'm here for the chamber.
Very good.
We have changes going on in the chamber, and I'm here to support my fellow Thrive people.
Very good. All right, Kate, you want to begin?
Sure. There was materials that we submitted that were in a PowerPoint. Don't know if that was...
No, you didn't get that to the right folks, probably, so...
I didn't give it to the right one.
Is that
I'll
this
see what I can do
very
here.
dark PowerPoint?
Did it come out like that?
Yeah, it's very dark.
I can basically read it.
I probably couldn't. Okay, well, that's all right.
The original, and you can talk from it.
We're going to improvise. Nope. We can pull it up on a phone over here. All right. Well, Brattleboro thrives.
Great.
Let's start at the beginning. So the first thing we were going to just update everybody on is the timeline. So to get people up to speed, in January 2024, Greg and I came to the board to talk about this new initiative. We had been doing community marketing and felt that after the Sam's closure on Main Street and sort of seeing that there was going to be continued transition, that we really wanted an economic development initiative specifically for Brattleboro. Again, coming from the downtown org, many of my peers across the state either have an economic development person within the downtown organization or at the municipality that they partner with. And Brattleboro, being the size and hub that it is, feels like it should have a position. And so this is to augment the work of the BDCC that's looking regional, and then to be supervised or sort of housed with the DBA and the chamber. So in 2024, the Select Board approved this initiative. Thank you, Seth. Genius. Approved this initiative and allocated funding for 2 years. These are our goals. Since I'm on a roll with the timeline, can you just go to the next one, then I'll go back to this. So that was the initial funding. So then in January through June, we did the search. I should say that I was meeting with a steering committee that involved myself and Greg, Adam from the BDCC, Sue Fillion, and Patrick Moreland from the town. So sort of looking at all of the entities that are doing business support and economic development work. We talked a lot back and forth about, are we looking for a part-time or certain amount of hours position? Are we looking at a consultant? Is this a contract? So, kind of forming this. And where we landed was to come up with a contract position. So we did a search, went through the hiring process. We hired someone in June. That person was not successful in the contract, so we parted ways in September. And so serendipitously, Neil and I had a relationship from the DBA in the past. Neil had served on the DBA board and had come to back to the area, and we had been talking, and he was sort of presenting me ideas about business incubation and things, and so I was talking to him about the position, and so we decided to go with a contract as a consultant for a shorter amount of time with a more clear set of goals. So Neil has been on board with us until now, and we'll go through what we've done to this point. So let's go back to the goals just real quick. The goals of this initiative is to increase economic vibrancy in Brattleboro. So this is about connecting our local stakeholders, who I've mentioned, centralizing existing resources. This is something we hear over and over from businesses, entrepreneurs, not knowing who to go to, when, where to find the right information. My initial sort of pitch was really about attracting and retaining businesses to Brattleboro. So building that pipeline and creating a business ecosystem that was friendly and attractive. And then, of course, pursuing some grant funding to help support these initiatives. So, great. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Neil now to talk a little bit about what we've done to date.
So probably works. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Kate. Yeah. So before I even start, I'll just note by saying that a lot of what I'm going to share in a bit more detail is memorialized in a report that we plan to kind of pass along. So we'll cover a lot of this in more detail. So a lot of what I'm talking about is kind of high level. And I'll also begin by sort of just shaping the way of thinking about economic development, at least from my perspective. And I know like the committee was sort of thinking about this as like it's a long-term game. You know, there is no like simple silver bullet. It's really about facilitating ecosystems, coming up with plans. And so in that vein, I think there was a lot of focus on taking some time to develop a strategy that really kind of could make sense and then serve as an umbrella to kind of have specific actions taken under it. So to start this process, there was a fair amount of market research done in the form of a consumer survey, collection of data looking through different software systems to kind of get an idea of, you know, what does the current economic landscape look like? And then cataloging of like existing business resources, as Kate talked about. There are lots of people already doing kind of work like this in the area and different things that people can take advantage of, but it's not as easy to know where to find those, and they're sort of can be a bit fragmented. So this idea of like, how do we bring all of these things together and sort of create a centralized place that can increase access to those resources for either existing businesses or new businesses? And the other element was looking at like grant and funding opportunities to make this a sustainable process. How do we do stand-up programs that can attract funding from outside sources that then can kind of make this sort of an evergreen situation? And then the fourth piece up there is the Doing Business in Brattleboro guide, which there's an existing one that I believe is on the website. It seems to be focused largely on like regulation guidance and things like that. And the idea here was to create a larger piece that encapsulated the first 3 points I talked about, the existing business resources, funding opportunities, and market research, alongside some of the existing stuff, to make it one central hub where people could be pointed to when they're looking for various things. And also including sort of this breakdown of like the business ecosystem in phases. And so we've done that. We've kind of created the phases, like whether you have an initial idea or you have an existing business trying to sell your business, and then cataloging the resources that exist in each of those categories, and giving some guidance for people if someone is at the Chamber of Commerce, for instance, is asked about something specifically, they have a central point to point someone to. So that was part of the framework and the work that's been done to date to kind of shape this.
I'm just going to add in, so the Doing Business in Brattleboro guide was created in 2013. It doesn't include the DBA. It doesn't include a lot of folks who are part of the ecosystem now. And so it's not just about sort of like updating the PDF. It's really about creating a system and integrating so that no matter where a business enters and who they're talking to, we're all speaking the same way and pointing in the same directions. The other thing that I have for you is a little draft of some of this market research. It's something called Main Street by the Numbers. I'm not a graphic designer, but I'll just pass this out to you guys. There's one that's kind of designed and then the other one has.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Keep one.
And so the idea behind this kind of one sheet is really when we do have a business that's interested, they ask for this kind of data, right? Like how many cars are on Main Street? What does the annual visits look like to your town? What is the potential spend? And we never had this at our fingertips. And so this is a really useful tool. I've already used it in several conversations. And so this is something that, again, that we can start pushing out to be more proactive in that business recruitment attraction conversation.
Yes, you want to just go to the next slide. So some of this data will be in front of you there. Average visitor income, annual visits, daily car traffic. And as you can see, there's a the socioeconomic demographic that comes to visit town, has some disposable income to spend in local businesses. We're getting over 1 million visits a year. Daily car traffic is fairly significant. The 20,000 number is roughly what businesses are looking for traffic-wise when they're trying to pick a location. On the right side, in the top corner there, you'll see the meals and rooms tax. So we went through a decade of the sales tax revenue data and then adjusted it for inflation, and it kind of tells an interesting story. you can see that in 2014, we were actually technically taking in slightly more money than we are now when you adjust for inflation. So this is just sort of showcasing like where we are in terms of our progress and what that trend looks like. And I think makes the case that, there's some opportunity to sort of change that trajectory in a way that brings in more revenue. And then there's some takeaways from the consumer survey in the bottom corner, sort of speaking about the desire to have a more diverse business mix, this idea of third spaces, places people can come and congregate without necessarily having to spend money, but this idea of like, how do we make more opportunities for people to come and spend time downtown, and maybe it's not just going to a retail business, and then restaurant variety. I think a lot of these pieces, again, they're just high-level takeaways. The report has a bit more detail, but this is just showcasing some of the realities that exist and then some of the sort of consumer feedback that we've cataloged. And then the next slide talks a bit about sort of after we've done this work, how we are thinking about then proceeding to move forward. And I spoke a bit about the Doing Business in Brattleboro guide, and Kate's talked about the importance of that. And we sort of have collated a lot of that content. Now the idea is to sort of publish it in a marketable asset that then can kind of live on a website and be accessed easily. The second piece here, I think a lot of this, the value here is about creating relationships and serving as like a central hub. So developing and maintaining partnerships with key stakeholders like property owners, business owners, local organizations, as a way to kind of connect all of these different people who are making decisions along the sort of business ecosystem chain, and having sort of the Thrives person serve as the connector of those. The third piece is sort of creating and implementing programming. So there's a couple different pieces in here. The rental, open house, and fit-up support is about kind of better showcasing some of the spaces that are available in downtown and maybe trying to connect people who are looking for them. The fit-up support is recognizing that, like, if you have a 2,000 square foot retail space, but, currently a lot of retailers don't need that large, like, is there a way to kind of help shift those spaces to be things that are more marketable for the current retail landscape? And both of these programs are things that in theory, because of the potential impact, could attract outside grant funding. So a lot of this comes back to the idea, like, how can we stand up programming that can attract further money to bring it in to help support some of these things? Tax stabilization was looked at in the report. There will be some examples of how different towns around Vermont do it, and then also some just sort of theoretical basis for how to think about it. The idea is, like, how do we help people sort of access the existing stabilization program to help sort of promote and encourage some of the investments to take place to make some of the retail spaces better suited to sort of the current modern retail realities. And then events and promotion, which takes place, but it's sort of the idea of, like, how do we increase people coming to downtown for various things? And so there's some strategies in thinking about how we kind of move that forward. And then again, pursuing grant funding to try to bring in more capital to make this sustainable over the long term.
I would say, too, under our programming, we've done pop-ups. The DBA did the Market on Main in the Sam space, and that pop-up really generated some activity for the space for a bit of time. It didn't lead to a lease there, but it did lead to a sale of a different building downtown. So I think we know that the more that we're getting people in spaces, the better. As far as promotion as well, I think that we need to start telling the story that Brattleboro is open for business and that there is an opportunity here. And so the marketing, might shift a bit more into that space. So yes, of course, we're still doing events and we're still encouraging, sort of the public to come downtown, but we also need to be encouraging entrepreneurs, investors, developers to downtown.
Can I add one quick thing?
Yeah.
I just want to point out, these Neil and Kate have done all the work, so I'm not taking credit for anything. But what they've done, I just can translate to the rest of the town as well. I want to make sure that, the Fixing That Doing Business in Brattleboro guide is going to help everybody. Yes. Making the partnerships that they're talking about, we can make them everywhere. So what they've started can go town-wide.
Yes, which was really the intent. The intent of the 2-year pilot was to start downtown. So the funding is for 2 years, just to start downtown and then to expand to the rest of the town.
Yeah. So DBA gets a lot of credit for doing all of this work that can go to a wider audience.
Next slide. Oh, that's it. Okay, questions.
Great.
I bet you had some. Yes.
You have questions?
All right, let's start with Amanda.
Oh, start with me. Okay. So business recruitment, where and when? Where are you guys going to recruit businesses and when?
When, where, and when. So one thing that I think we've learned as well is that it's easier to recruit existing businesses that might be looking for a second location than it is to start from startups and entrepreneurs. And so there have been some kind of one-offs that have been happening. And we have in our office kind of a wish list of folks. And so it's really just starting to figure out, like, working with our inventory as well. We did a building and business inventory about a year and a half ago for downtown. And so keeping that up to date and knowing what spaces are available, you know, it's really kind of this matchmaking game. So starting now, I mean, right? We want to start now. It's going to take, as Neil said, it's sort of like the long game. And from when this initiative was proposed until now, there's a lot of great things that have already happened. I mean, Brattleboro is a great place where people come to and these businesses happen anyway. But what we want to do is to also be working with folks that we know are thinking about a transition. The BDCC recently hired Danny Delaney, and she is doing excellent work with businesses that are looking at transition planning. And I've already connected her with some folks in downtown. So it's that kind of stuff. It's like sort of thinking a year, 2 year, 3 years ahead around those kinds of places, as well as the current vacancies.
When I asked where, I mean, are you going to like conferences or networking in other parts of the country? Vermont is an attractive place for climate refugees, for people looking for a more maybe liberal political environment. So I'm wondering, are you steering towards marketing Brattleboro to North Carolina or?
Yes,
other
I actually
places?
was saying to someone recently, I'm like, we should be using that like brave little state tagline around this idea for businesses as well, and thinking about their employees. Right now, I think we're looking a little bit closer to home as far as, you know, even just getting information into the Vermont Business Magazine that goes out. You know, there's a printed piece and they are regularly emailing all the time, getting Brattleboro on people's minds as far as a place for business. And then kind of working that list of potential business types that we also think would do well in downtown.
Okay, can I throw out some more questions?
Sure.
So Brattleboro has a tax stabilization for businesses already, right? So how would it be different?
We're not necessarily at this moment proposing anything specifically different. It's more that having one centralized person coming. So in other towns, there's a specific person who comes in, sort of acts as the liaison between the person seeking out the stabilization and the select board. And that, I think, just like streamlines the communication. It's not like a fresh new thing every day because there's a sort of common understanding. I think that's the start. I think there might be room potentially to streamline the whole thing, but we're not necessarily suggesting that happens right now. It's more just having there be a formalized person coming, kind of making those tax stabilization recommendations so that they're kind of well versed in it.
We could look, there are towns, I think, around who do have a more formalized program, though. I think our understanding is that Brattleboro's is kind of this one-off instead of saying, here's what our tax stabilization program is across the board.
And then events and promotion. What specifically are you guys?
So we've done small business promotions, you know, shop local promotions. Are one that we've done several years is the Plaid Friday campaign. We also did a Independence Month during July featuring local independently owned businesses. We're looking at doing a retail rental open house program. So again, working with entrepreneurs or businesses looking for a second location and really doing a coordinated effort around showcasing the empty available spaces. And I think a pop-up program, again, kind of formalizing that so that we have landlords who are ready and say, yes, my space, and this is how we want to do it, and this is what the, potential price will be, so that that can become more systematized. There's one other thing I had in my head now, I just lost it. Like a lot of what, downtown is doing, or the DBA is doing, I would say, is about attracting people into the downtown. We are hoping to, again, scale up our holiday lights program and display, anything that really attracts people to see Brattleboro as a destination. And the other piece that came forward around third spaces, placemaking is so critical, and having pride of place, having a place that looks good. If it looks good, if it looks taken care of, it's a place that people want to be. So these kind of all fit together, I would say.
That's it?
I have one more.
Oh, gosh. Go right
All right.
ahead.
Does doing business in Brattleboro, is there a video component, or is it purely print, or is there social media? How's that getting disseminated?
So we have some videos that we did last year. There's 5 of them that feature businesses downtown. They're anywhere from 1 minute to 1.5 minutes. There might be one of somebody who's up there on the select board. And so the idea would be that the doing business in Brattleboro, again, would have some of this kind of Main Street numbers. It would have how you enter and find the resources. And then it would have these video, almost testimonials of folks talking about their businesses. Again, kind of giving people that feel of what the business environment is like. I think there would definitely be an opportunity in using some of the Thrive funds towards working with promotion marketing professional to come up with what is the rollout of that. That would include social media and different pieces that way.
Is that a link or something that could be accessed on the town website?
Yes, I think we want as many, again, points of entry as possible. So there's a link on the town website, on the BDCC, on the DBA, on the chamber, so that we're all sort of in the Thrives train.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, Oscar, you have comments?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could tell me a little bit more context about the reinvestment stats 2024 part.
Yeah, so every year the DBA collects reinvestment data to give back to the state. And so I work closely with Sue Fillion on getting those numbers. So the investment data is both public and private investment in downtown, the public improvement projects, again, from Sue, and then the businesses that we've seen in a year's time.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. That's it?
Yep.
How about this side?
Yeah, just also looking at this number, the $1 million in reinvestment from 2024.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying that is the value of the public improvement projects that were completed and the revenue from the businesses that opened in 2024? Or?
No, it's the public improvement projects, or public investment and private investment in downtown projects. Yeah. We don't have it in front of us. So the numbers that I take from the reinvestment data that I submit to the state, it's broken out the 2 numbers. So I just added them together and put them here because it looks better.
It looks like Sue has something to say.
Well,
just say, so it's estimates based on what people will put on their permits for the value of the improvements they're making, as well as, what we know, some of the grants that have been given out. So if you added them together, then it's both, projects that the town has undertaken in the downtown, as well as all the private investment.
Thank you. And then the other question about numbers is, I saw something about $65 million in meals and room tax. Did I see that correctly? And I'm curious where that money ends up.
John?
That's not
Yeah.
a number that I'm familiar with.
Yeah, I'm not.
I saw on one of the slides. Okay.
If you go on the state website, we just pull the numbers from there and take the town and just take the data, and then we just adjusted it over a 10-year period.
Oh, okay. So that's the cumulative amount? Or?
Yeah, I'd have to double check. Let's look at the spreadsheet,
Okay.
but
Sure.
it's just showing that there essentially hasn't gone up. It's sort of stayed fairly stagnant. And
Okay.
That's the story that's trying to tell.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really don't have anything. I've known about this data for a while, and I use our daily car traffic data often when speaking to suppliers to get added things out, and it works because it's a lot of people. It's a lot of cars that are going up and down our main street every day, and if you've spent any amount of time with me, my mantra is business goes where business is invited, and you guys really invite people into our downtown, which invites business into our downtown, which helps our downtown grow. And as long as we're doing our part and providing a good, safe downtown space for people to come into and infrastructure that they can enjoy, I think this is a home run.
Great. I just have a couple things. Thank you for this, and thank you for your work. And I note that Tavernier Chocolates is now the best chocolatier in New England or something like that, right?
Of course.
According to Yankee Magazine.
Oh, yes, they were just featured in Yankee
According
Magazine.
to your Instagram feed.
Yes, you're right. I don't do the Instagram. Yeah.
Let's see. And so your consumer demographics, that would be where? In the community profile, or?
The community profile is for Brattleboro, and then the downtown visitation data looks more at our visitors. So this is the data that we get through mobile cell tracking. We geofence the downtown, and then we can generate this data.
Great. And then I was just a little unclear as to Mr. Goldberg's tenure. I know you had a timeline, but Neil, how much longer are you with us?
I think that my time here is maybe kind of wrapping up, but I started, me and Kate had been talking for a while over last year and kind of going back and forth about ideas. I think I started working actively in December, so yeah.
Great, well, thank you for all your work. And then the last thing is really for Kate. Kate, we all grieve the loss of Greg Lesh. Yes. And I think we should say again how he was the heart and soul of the chamber. And I wondered if, well, first of all, I appreciate it. I guess I understand that you've stepped in on an interim basis. Is that it? And would you like to tell us the plan and staffing as the chamber is now and in the future?
Well, I'll make the big news for Chris Mays. I actually became the permanent executive director of the chamber as of yesterday. So that is our plan going forward, and we're going to have a strong partnership, continue our strong partnership with DBA, BDCC, all the other organizations, that are working towards the same cause. So
great.
I am it as of yesterday.
Well, congratulations. And are there other staff members working at the chamber?
We do have a nice person who's helped us keep it going, but we are going to be doing a search for a second staff person. Yes.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
And I'll keep you posted.
All right. So Are there comments? I've seen Steve's hand up for a while.
Hi, very good, very nice presentation. Thank you very much. Steve Peterson, District 7. In your conversations with businesses or potential businesses, can you tell me, are there things that you're hearing that are key attributes that they want to see in order to turn a maybe into a yes? Are there issues or problems that they've identified that are keeping them from coming? Are there opportunities that they have cited that we, as from a policy perspective, could seize upon to turn maybes into yeses for a thriving downtown?
That's a great question, Steve. Some of it comes down to just the numbers, right? So some businesses that I have talked to are smaller franchises, or there was a outdoor retailer that's looking at, expanding 2 or 4 new stores every year. And so for folks like that, they also really want to see what do the sales look like in our region for their product already, and is there a market there? And then are there enough folks that live within a drive time that have the, expendable income to frequent their store? Another piece does come down to the storefronts really being sort of white wall, turnkey ready. I think that's been one of the bigger holdups with the Sam's space, is that, there really hasn't been any movement in there as far as doing anything to outfit the space. As Neil mentioned, many retailers do not need 7,000 square feet on a Main Street level. People are looking more at like 1,000, 1,500. And so that's something that we need to think about as we're getting our spaces ready and working with landlords. I think the reality is that your Main Street level businesses are not going to, they can't afford to pay the rents that maybe the upper floor housing or that kind of thing is going to offset. So we really need to be thinking creatively about that. That was different answers than the questions that you asked, but it's kind of all of that thinking.
Thank you.
Really nice work you're doing.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Fidel?
Okay, David Lombard, District 9. 2 things having to do with meals, alcohol, and rooms. Number one, the figure in your slide doesn't seem to correspond with the budget pages. So it looks like you've got $65 million without much of an increase over 10 years, where the budget in FY25 has $520,000 expected from rooms and meals. So, we're off by a big amount. But the other question, I seem to recall that the motel program does not pay rooms tax. And if that's the correct, again, it's another sort of issue associated with the motel program that is of concern. Thank you.
David, that is correct about the motel program. And we've already mentioned the discrepancy in that rooms and meal number.
I wonder if that was for all of them. It's the state.
So, are there any comments from the assembly in person? Hearing none, let's have, pardon me?
I saw Nell's hand.
Yeah. Nelmo, District 8. I was just asking, or I was wondering if it could be shared a bit about what you maybe have found out about support for third spaces, especially when those are emphasized as places people can go to exist without potentially paying for them, and the reason for personal interest being that I am involved in one downtown, and if that's more appropriately directed to a personal conversation afterwards I understand that.
Well, now let's ask Kate, and if it's more appropriate for you two to talk later, I'm sure she'll tell us.
Yeah, I mean, we've been thinking more about third spaces that are public spaces. So I think I know the one that you're referring to. So these would be potentially opened all the time, like looking at our parks or different gathering places within downtown, and how do we activate those in different ways to create more of a third space, a place that people want to go to and be in. I'd love to talk to you offline a little bit more about the one that you're involved in, for sure.
Great. John, did you want to add something?
Nope.
Okay. So we just want to thank you for this information, and great to meet Neil and thank him for his work. And Kate, I'm happy about your new position. We just want to thank you and look forward to the next installment of success.
Yes, more success ahead.
Yes, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We might ask Kate to stay with us for the next item.
Kate, will you stay with us for the next item?
I sure will.
Excellent. No.
Seth, can you pull
so
up
the next
those
item
two?
is the Spark Street Mural Project Public Art Applications. John,
Yeah.
do you want to talk about it?
Sure, I'll start. So the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance came to the town with the suggestion that these public art exhibits be displayed in downtown Brattleboro, and so they're here to solicit the select board's support in this effort. And with that, I would turn it over to Kate to explain what this is all about and what the ask is.
Don't keep us in the dark, Kate.
I am so sorry. I don't know. Okay, so the Spark Street Mural Project was a Town Arts Fund grant that we were awarded this project concept in June of 2024. So if you've traveled around Greenfield or Northampton, you may notice that their electrical boxes on their main streets have little mini murals on them. So instead of being a big black box, they're a point of interest. And Brattleboro being the arts and culture capital of Vermont, I thought that we should really, embrace this idea. So we put forward Spark Street to the Town Arts Fund, and we got a grant award for half of the cost. DBA is matching the other half. In February 26th of 2025, we did a call for artists submissions. So that went out on social media. It went out through different art collectives. It went on the Vermont Arts Council Opportunities website. Submissions were due mid-March. We did a selection of the submissions a few days later, and then went to the Town Arts Committee for approval the end of March. Now we're here for the final approval, and then we would like to announce to the public who was chosen, and the murals will be completed by July. So the first, one of the submissions here that was selected, this is Calvin Latori, who is one of the artists on the High Street mural. It's a sort of a natural scene with some moose. And this is one that was selected by the committee and then approved at the Town Arts Committee. Go to the next one. Cosmic Flower Garden is another one that was selected. This artist is Cynthia Houghton and family. And so this one is a little bit more whimsical, creative, colorful. Next one. And this one was submitted by Caitlin Hudson and represents the Pride flag, intersex flag, and that was the third one. So they're all very uniquely different. I think bring in different pieces of Brattleboro in different ways. The committee was really excited about it, and so our artists are anxious to get going.
Great. So, Kate, you're actually presenting this and asking us if we will approve these 3 mural projects, and then you'll run with it.
Yep. And then within the next month, you'll see them in downtown.
Excellent. Okay, so board, does someone want to read this potential motion?
I'll make a motion. Oh,
Go ahead.
Me? Okay.
Fighting over it.
I move to approve the public art applications for 3 public art exhibits downtown that are part of the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance Spark Street Public Art Projects.
Great. Is there discussion?
Slam dunk for me.
Yes, Oscar.
2 questions. One, when they're applied, is there a way to protect them?
Yes.
From the, yeah?
Yeah, so each artist will be using the same, whatever they used on the High Street mural, so it helps to keep the graffiti off. Yes.
Okay. Then the other question, I mean, maybe I'm just completely misremembering, and that's I was sure I remembered an artwork by Calvin that actually had links in it. Like the packet we had a couple meetings ago when we took this off the agenda. So maybe the joke is that there's no links in this, and that's why it's called Missing Links. But I was positive that I remembered one with a link. So I was
You are not mistaken. He had a links one.
Okay.
There was a links, there was the moose, and there was even a third one. He put 3 forward as different concepts, and the committee chose the moose out of the 3.
Okay, great.
I really like the idea of calling it the missing link. All right, so are we good? Ready to vote?
Sure.
Does anyone from the public have a question? All right, let's ready to go. All in favor of the motion that Amanda read, which reads, to approve the Spark Street Mural Project's public art applications for 3 public art exhibits in downtown Brattleboro. Please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Thank you very much. And Kate, thank you for all your work.
Thank you very much.
Okay, John, do you want to present the Anna Hunt Marsh and Charles Dana Bridges presentation?
Yep. So the board met with the Hinsdale Select Board on March 3rd to learn about a project that New Hampshire DOT is doing to renovate these 2 bridges, the Anna Hunt Marsh, which starts on the Brattleboro side, and the Charles Dana Bridge, which goes from the island to the New Hampshire side. And the DOT staff had several questions for the boards at that time, and it was decided to answer those questions at a later date. Since that meeting, there was a follow-up with several board members, staff, regional planners, and the town administrator from Hinsdale and myself. And at that meeting, we were really just sort of trying to plan a second joint meeting with the Hinsdale Select Board, and instead it got into a discussion of maybe writing a joint letter instead, or a couple letters to DOT with a number of requests. And some of the things that were discussed at this meeting are summarized in your memo, but they were, first of all, addressing ways that both towns could benefit from this bridge renovation project, things like tourist destination, potential trail connections, Connecticut River access, attraction for users of the new Amtrak station, and related sort of economic spending in both Brattleboro and Hinsdale. Further, this group thought that maybe a series of requests could be made of New Hampshire DOT, and the things that were discussed were things like asking the DOT to conduct a public RFP process for use and stewardship of the bridges and the island prior to the towns providing feedback on bridge design. So really the thought being that it's hard to say how you should renovate and what you should do with the bridges if you don't know who the steward and what the plans of the steward of those facilities would be. Secondly, that the towns have input on the RFP design guidelines. So what is it that the DOT would put out for an RFP? Could the towns have input on that? And then also asking them if the towns could be part of the decision process on which proposal was selected. Then this group also suggested that perhaps the boards may want to talk about the sidewalk on the Anna Hunt Marsh Bridge and keeping that in use, which was something that the DOT indicated, I believe, at your March 3rd meeting that was not going to be possible. Other things that came up were the idea of a nighttime gate on the Brattleboro side, as well as a public safety plan. That could be part of what's requested of the DOT. And then two final things were maintaining infrastructure that would allow for lighting access across the site and taking measures to plan for and begin funding the long-term maintenance of the bridges. So those were some of the things that were discussed as we were thinking and talking about building a second joint meeting with Hinsdale. Since that time, Hinsdale's informed us that they have had several conversations at their board meetings about this project. They've discussed it multiple times. They've also been seeing a lot of increasing negative activity on the island, particularly over the last few months, and that their interest in doing a lot out here is waning, was sort of the sense that I got. They've had a significant increase in calls for service to the island that is placing an unexpected burden on their town budget. They've been calls for things like homeless activity, vicious dogs, people fighting, people starting fires, and drug use. And they informed us that in 1 week, the Hinsdale Police Department has responded to 6 calls for service on the island, and the Hinsdale Fire Department 2 more. They believe that the people responsible for these calls are 95% from the Brattleboro community, was what was communicated to me. And the things that the Hinsdale Select Board is currently interested in are, would any leaseholder maintain safety of the space? Who will keep it clean? Who will police the use of the space? They're interested in how they get compensated from DOT or someone else for service calls or cleanup. They're also interested in gating the bridges and posting no trespass signs. So really, it seems like the priority in Hinsdale is keeping the impact to their budget and the tax burden for their residents down. So that may throw a twist in how this board wants to think about moving forward, but I'm not sure. You could develop ideas for a joint letter, and I'm happy to bring that over there and see if they're interested and willing to sign on. But, you know, another route that you could do is do your own letter directly to DOT and let them know your thoughts. So that's kind of where this is at, and I'd be looking for guidance from the board on any next steps you'd want me to take.
Great. So before we begin our discussion, I just want to point out something that wasn't in this memo, and that is an alternative that Hinsdale suggested and other people have suggested, which is tearing down at least the Anna Marsh section of the bridge or both bridges and working with the Connecticut River Conservancy to focus on the island itself and sort of create a dock on the Brattleboro side for kayaking and so forth. So there are alternatives. I agree that we should be sending some sort of a letter to them, but we need to keep in mind the negative activities that I think would only increase in the warm weather. And we also need to keep in mind that we would also be providing mutual aid to Hinsdale in this regard. So let's have our discussion. And I bet you Amanda wants to begin because she's very knowledgeable about this subject.
Beginning. So I've been closely connected with a group of citizens, a really dynamic group of citizens, including the Connecticut River Conservancy, to initiate cleanups, have pop-up walkabouts, bikeabouts, future programming on the event. I think Cynthia Parker Houghton's going to do a puppet thing mid-July. There's a lot of positive ideas about, and not just ideas, but actually action-oriented about this space, and a lot of hope for this space. That particular group is interested in potentially becoming a stewardship nonprofit for the bridge, which is pretty exciting. Interested in participating in the RFP process in collaboration potentially with Bob Belligor, who's also interested. In terms of the public safety piece, there's a potential, New Hampshire Department of Fish and Wildlife. It's in their jurisdiction, and they do quite a bit of work over in Pisgah State Park. And so really trying to ally with our friends in New Hampshire to entertain the possibilities beyond the municipality. In the conversation, it's been very clear that Brattleboro as a municipality, we don't have any money to spend, but there's such an interested group of citizens. And at the first meeting seemed kind of collaborative with the town of Hinsdale. It's too bad that the memo things have kind of turned, whether it's kind of like, what are you going to do about it, Brattleboro kind of thing? That's what it might be. And granted, that's important. And to show how serious they are about the public safety piece. So more on that. Hopefully we could get a meeting with some of the interested community members and town manager to kind of talk about a potential letter or the select board or whatever way I can liaison any of that. Happy to do that.
Well, I think at this point we've promised Hinsdale to collaborate on the letter.
Yep.
So let's do that first, and then we'll talk about all these ideas, especially if the group you're talking about wants to be a responder to the RFP.
Yes, that's already been indicated.
Yes, so that's in a separate bucket, so to speak,
right.
So that the two towns would be collaborating and interacting with New Hampshire DOT, and to a limited amount, Vermont DOT. But then the bidders are in, as I said, a separate space.
Mm-hmm.
So, great. But I think what John needs to know from us now is, shall we be drafting a letter, much of the contents of which is presented here? Does everyone agree that this type of letter that John would prepare should be sent? That's really the question before us now.
I think so too, and the letter hopefully would articulate that there's a large group of stakeholders who are very interested and behind stewardship of the project. So it's not sort of like a flash in the pan, but like a long-term, project. So if there's more information needed on that front, we could have a group testify to the select board if that would be helpful at some point, or kind of whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's rules about bidders. So conveying to Hinsdale that we know of a bidder, and of course they know of a bidder.
Yep.
So that's important. But the other content of the letter is really what we need to give John a signal to. So are you content with the other aspects of the letter is really the question. Oscar, do you have comments?
I'm a little, everything mentioned for the letter makes sense, but the end of the memo sort of makes it sound like that kind of letter makes less sense in this context or something like that. Could you?
Yeah, I think it was what I was saying before. It's really, I'm not sure if Hinsdale will be interested in signing on or not. That's why you may want to just plan to send a letter to DOT from the Brattleboro Select Board. I can go have a conversation and see if they're interested in signing on to the same letter or even modifying it enough that their interests are addressed as well. But really my plan would be to take your feedback tonight, draft a letter, run that by Hinsdale, see if we can come to a joint letter, which I think would be more powerful, but
I agree.
In the absence of that, moving forward with something that is the thoughts of this board.
I think that makes sense. I should say I think I really appreciate and share, Amanda, your determination to have this turn into something positive, right? Like there's an opportunity here. And I think making sure that that message, however it's most appropriate, does get conveyed, that we have enthusiasm for this, we want to work with them to find the best outcome, and the idea that there's a big group of people involved and excited. I think finding some way to communicate that to Hinsdale and to the state would be helpful. So, I mean, everything in this second list of bullet points sounds like things that we would want and that are good. For me, the letter really comes down to things I know less about, like how do we pitch it so that it appeals to Hinsdale and is within the ballpark of something that they want to work with us on. But I think that's more a question for John.
Before I go to John, I just want to say that, there are risks and there are liabilities, and we need to be mindful of them. And, I'm not far from the Hinsdale position myself. So we need to explore this, and we need to kind of wrestle with what type of responsibility would a potential bidder have within the RFP process, because there are downsides and there's financial responsibilities that Hinsdale and Brattleboro are playing a very interesting game of old maid that no one wants this responsibility.
Yeah, I think those are definitely important considerations. I guess and I don't want to lose sight of them, I guess what I'm advocating for is that, there are shadings of how you approach a problem or a situation, and I would like us at least, in this very early going to, stay positive and not lose sight of the opportunities here. We're not going to plunge into something with huge financial risks, and we'll look at all that stuff in time. But I guess I wouldn't want to color the discussion too early with all the downsides, because I think there is a lot of opportunity here. So that's all.
I just, having attended that meeting in Hinsdale, I keep going back to, and I can't remember his name, his commitment to this project after the $9 million. The $9 million was spent to make it shiny and somewhat new, was how low on the priority list New Hampshire DOT was going to make this thing. And he kept repeating that and repeating that and repeating that. And he really made it a true emphasis to the fact that we're going to fix this, we're going to forget about it, and it's going to be your problem. So
low priority project.
Yeah, and he repeated that a dozen times, which, I mean, I've never maintained a bridge. I don't imagine it's inexpensive. I mean, Amanda talks about stakeholders. Does that mean just volunteer help?
Well, no, that doesn't just include volunteer help. But the 2-year reconstruction of the bridge is something DOT is committed to and would occur with the funding that you referenced. But then they want to be very hands-off, as you've just stated, low priority, you said. But with that, what's a New Hampshire DOT low priority project is a great opportunity for Brattleboro. Steve Diorio of the Hinsdale Select Board, at a later meeting, that March meeting that John, Liz, and I attended, I asked the specific question, can you find mutually beneficial economic opportunity in this project? And he said, yes. I can, and I do, and other people there, whether it's extending the bike trail that comes from Hinsdale. It's something that has a lot of opportunity, but it is truly a leap of faith. So I do understand the trepidation that is coming from the select board simultaneously with the optimism.
Yeah, I mean, I see this project being this beautiful thing that can really transform into something magnificent and wonderful. And then I just crossed the bridge going over to Chesterfield that had that same promise. And having ridden my bike across this thing that looks just nothing short of dystopian at this point, sort of scares me about the onset of this project. Because that bridge, even though owned by Hinsdale, New Hampshire, really just kind of sits in our backyard to look at, and it really will become sort of our function. And I want to believe that this thing can be more. I really do. In my heart of hearts, I really have to be convinced that it would be.
I do think, too, we can't lose sight of the fact that the Amtrak station, the brand new Amtrak station, I mean, that's a new start for our town in that area of our town, which is a different lead-in than, say, the Chesterfield Bridge.
John, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, a while back. So Oscar was looking for the positive things, which that was what the first bullet list was meant to refer to, and I heard adding stakeholder interest, large stakeholder interest, as maybe a possible additional positive part of this project. And then also what I'm hearing from some board members is we got to look at the long-term maintenance of this. And, if you say $9 million is the renovation of this bridge now, it's been getting a lot of vehicular use. So, there's maybe more than it would need, 20, 30, 50 years from now. But I'm wondering if the board is thinking in terms of maintenance costs and whether that's something you want to raise with DOT, because we know these bridges will no longer be in the federal highway system, so they won't be eligible for federal funding in the future. It'll just be state of New Hampshire funding and town of Brattleboro funding, because we own a percentage of the Anna Hunt Marsh Bridge. And so whether, I don't know, is that something that you want to explore with DOT? Like, how would funds get set aside to maintain that bridge over time? Because that would address like your question, Peter.
Yeah.
I'd say budget numbers would be super helpful if New Hampshire engineers or DOT is willing to provide estimates.
What did we determine we own 7%? Was that it?
Yeah,
Was that the number?
And the other thing to keep in mind is that, there's just an equation. Do we want New Hampshire to spend this money repairing the bridge and then walk away, or are there alternatives? And that needs to be studied, because really, when you drive over to Hinsdale, it's perfectly clear that this is nowhere near Hinsdale, and they're not going to be willing to foot the bill for what Brattleboro foresees as an amenity. Isaac, did you have comments?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to thank Amanda for the work that you've done with the Connecticut River Conservancy, and it's great to see folks out there cleaning up the island just a few days ago. I have seen people using the island for multiple purposes for many years. Ride my canoe down the river, I've seen that, and even when there was car traffic going over. So I just want us to remember that people camping out there, we were cleaning up campsites from long time ago. There's many seasons of leaves on top of them. So I'm not sure how much of this is going to be new. And if there's pedestrian traffic, if there's bike traffic, I think that's going to be, I'm not clear on what the difference is between that and having car traffic in terms of these concerns that folks are having around activity on the island. I really agree this is an exciting opportunity for our town, thinking about people getting out of the Amtrak station and being able to just walk right over the river there. This is the beginning of the Wantastica Monadnock Trail, right at the at the Amtrak station. You can walk there to top of Monadnock. This is just, if we're thinking about this as a river town community, it can be easy to forget that we actually that we're right next to a river because we have big buildings blocking the view. And there's that park that's getting developed down by the Amtrak station, along with the new Amtrak station. So this could be a really nice extension of that, the restaurant that's getting fixed up over there. So I'd like for us to explore this, and I'm really supportive of this letter. So I'd like to make the motion, if nobody's made the motion yet, right?
Go right ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that the town of Brattleboro communicates a series of requests to the New Hampshire Department of Transportation regarding its renovation project for the Anna Hunt Marsh and Charles Dana bridges, as discussed, and that we first approach the Hinsdale Select Board, see if they would like to sign on, and if they're not interested, then we proceed independently.
Can I ask one question?
Well, I would like to just add that I think we should be respecting Hinsdale's concerns, and some of which I share. And so we need to have a balanced letter that talks about the pluses and the minuses.
Yeah, Liz, I think that's very realistic and understanding, and it's based in reality. So I hear you. Yeah, I think that's fair.
And so I think that this draft that we have before us really does reflect that, and if we want to give John the go-ahead to finish up this letter in that spirit.
Do we have a draft?
No, but the outline, the memo is really leading to what he would write in the letter.
And also with the emphasis on lighting the bridge, that was acknowledged by both communities as an essential component.
And public safety.
Yep. There was a little wiggle room about the sidewalk, whether the sidewalk is worth investing in.
That was New Hampshire DOT's main question, but that was the most irrelevant question of them all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
go ahead, Oscar.
I'm already forgetting. Okay, so process-wise, does this letter come back to us once it's drafted, or does...
I don't think that that's necessary. I think that we could give John the guidance from the memo that he's prepared, and he can send a letter to our neighboring town.
So the guidance is basically, the first two bulleted lists with the short summary paragraphs that precede both of them? Like the potential benefits?
No, we talked more broadly about recognizing Hinsdale's concerns as well.
I guess that could take a lot of forms, and I'm a little curious about what directions that might go in. Because I can imagine a version of that letter I can imagine a very positive, optimistic version of that letter, and I can imagine a pretty, negative version of that letter.
There were a lot of people just a minute ago nodding their heads to a balanced approach.
Sure, I guess I'm just saying that I'm not really getting a clear picture of the letter from the discussion we're having.
John, would you like to comment on the letter that you would prepare?
I would use this conversation as the basis for it, and I don't think it's a huge deal. I would add in, what's in here. I would acknowledge there's a bunch of stakeholders who are interested in the project. To the positive side, I would add some of the concerns that we've heard from Hinsdale, and that might bring them on board to sign the letter, which would be great. And I will also add something about asking DOT for their advice on setting aside money for long-term maintenance.
Okay, that sounds all right to me. I had one other quick comment, if that's okay. Just the observation that whatever activity we're seeing on the island, I feel like that's something that can be managed within the existing budgets of the two communities because it can't be new. I mean, if these, let's say it's 100% people from Brattleboro, these are people who otherwise must have been, fighting or having dogs or lighting fires down by the waterfront or in a parking lot or something like that. I mean, this is not, the island has not attracted a new population to the region.
It might on July 1st.
Oh, I'm sure, all sorts of things, yeah. But that's just my broader point. So I think it's workable.
Okay. Do we want to hear from the public? Sue?
Susan Belleville, Brattleboro. One thing to remember is that island and one of those bridges wholly belongs to New Hampshire. The reason why we don't hear about all the calls to the island is because that becomes New Hampshire's issue. We get called in on mutual aid for the fire and the dogs and the fighting and the police interactions. If the select board and the town of Brattleboro puts out there that they want to become financially responsible for that, we're going to have to enter into a lease agreement with New Hampshire for maintenance and insurance coverage of that space. After we just got done putting together a budget that no one can agree on the functionality of how we're going to run this town, I find taking on a new project of the two bridges between Brattleboro and Hinsdale so out of line with where we are financially and even where we are so far as agreeing what priorities are. I really would like to see the town get back to basics and taking care of what we need to take care of and have full funding for all of the programs that we really need full funding for, like roads, maintenance, and sidewalks, and our own infrastructure, our water and sewer lines that haven't been upgraded in 200 years, all of that stuff that is ready for a true investment by the people of Brattleboro that we're putting off. So I really, really, really would be very sad, although I appreciate the concept of taking on those, that would be so beautiful. We just can't afford it. We just can't afford it. Sorry.
Thank you, Sue.
May I speak to that? Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah, so when John said about how much money we should set aside, so the intention, and I think the only path forward, is to have a nonprofit or supportive group, part of this citizens group, that's going to invest in stewardship, long-term security as well. I mean, that's the other thing. If you need a private security, if you need a security service, and factor all that in. So the numbers that, say, John would get certainly would not be imposed on the town. Were they to be imposed on the town? Well, we just can't do it. I mean, that's perfectly clear. We can't afford it, right? And going into this, that's been the message. So no worries.
Okay, I saw Ivan, and then Marta, and then Gemma.
Hello, Ivan Hennessy, District 8. I've done a fair bit of traveling on the old Hinsdale Bridge and the new Hinsdale Bridge on foot and on bike since they've been opened. And I have to say that the new bridge into Hinsdale is a barrier for anyone who doesn't have a car. Not so much the location, it's a little bit farther away, but it is an incredibly harsh environment, and the wind on that thing caused me physical harm, actually. I was running across it, and I got windburn on my eyes and on my cheek. It was a cold day, but regardless, it's a very intense experience to travel across that bridge if you're not in a car. Of course, if I'm advocating for using or maintaining the old bridge for access between the two communities, a lot of people have to get to Runnings, to Walmart, and all of that stuff. That means that for a significant part of the year, I'm also advocating for snow removal, which is a whole nother big deal and an expense, but it's an important service for a significant population in the town, that there be this method of getting to the retail outlets that they need to reach without relying on more inaccessible transportation systems. Thank you.
Just going to mention that the mover goes to Walmart. Marta.
I want to agree with Ivan about the
name.
Marta Gossage, District 9. I want to agree with Ivan about the fact that, I used to walk over the bridge all the time to the Pawtucket Trails, and walking over the new bridges would pretty much take up all the time that I would have for a walk. So, personally, that would really just allow me to walk to the trails I like to walk on. But my question was to Amanda. I got so excited when you said there's a group of folks who have some ideas about beautification, because here in town over the last 2 years or so, I've talked to so many people who were so excited about, the phrase, just like the Bridge of Flowers in Shelburne, has made people smile and say, oh, I wonder how we're going to do it. I wonder if little groups could, have flower areas there, or if I've heard from a lot of people in town who are just so excited about something like that and want to get involved. Is there a way to put together a semi-official group that people could join to talk about their excitement and what they'd be willing to put into a project like that?
And offline, I can connect you with the email group.
Okay, well, I was thinking to put it out into public, so people who are not...
It's forming.
Yeah.
It's forming, and there is... Let's talk.
Yeah, let's talk. Because I think that, the Downtown Business Association and the Chamber of Commerce and others should probably be invested, because on a lot of our tourist material, we have seen short walk to Pawtucket Trails as a benefit in the tourist material. So, I think that's been a selling point as well. So it could help our businesses and tourism.
And Kate's been involved, and there's, So
Yeah.
we'll just bring you in.
Yeah, that would be
You can
awesome.
Get all the
Okay.
emails, too.
Great. Let's hear from Gemma, and then let's vote. Oh, Gemma, then Dick.
Hi.
Ken.
Okay. I just want to say how disappointed I am in this entire conversation and the fact that this situation even exists. I've made no secret of the fact that I opposed the new bridge plan from the very beginning, because its design is just completely unsuitable for our needs, and it's a disaster. The most disappointing part about this is that the entire design of the new bridge was predicated on the fact that the existing bridges would be renovated and continue to exist for pedestrian and bicycle traffic and for recreation. And, it now seems pretty clear that that's really just not going to happen. So the new bridge is entirely unsafe for pedestrians, disabled people, bicyclists, runners, for everyone, really, who isn't in a car. And, the old bridge is an eyesore. It's never going to be maintained as a vehicle bridge now that it's lost the funding of being part of the federal highway system. And so I really only see two paths forward here. Either we have to somehow petition Connecticut to cede that land to Vermont so that it becomes part of Brattleboro and not Hinsdale, or the Anna Marsh Bridge needs to be deconstructed and left to Hinsdale, that land, so that, they're just going to have to deal with it. Too bad. It seems pretty, we can't even use that bridge in the condition that it's in to walk or bicycle over. We have to use the new bridge. I've been living in this town for over 4 years now without a car, and I need to get across that bridge to go shopping because I can't afford to go shopping in Brattleboro. I have to go to Walmart. I have to go to Runnings. And now I'm forced to use an unsafe path to go there. Well, if we're going to be forced to use an unsafe path to go there, then what is even the point of trying to maintain the old bridge? Get rid of it. And if at some point in the future we want to reopen that path, then we can build a path that's appropriate to pedestrian and bicycle traffic and not to motor vehicle traffic. That bridge is decrepit, it is falling apart, and $9 million is not going to rescue it. Maybe in the short term it will, but in the long term, it's a liability to this town and to Hinsdale. Thank you.
Dick, before you begin, let me just answer Gemma. Gemma, I agree with you on many of those points. I think that New Hampshire DOT was not a good partner in when they negotiated their money from the federal government. They negotiated only for this task to maintain the bridges for themselves. And all of the work that had gone on between the two towns to identify future planning was not funded and not recognized by New Hampshire DOT. And that is, and on top of what we've already heard about it being a low priority, I think, there's a balance to be made from the wonderful idea on the one hand and the tremendous liability on the other. And if I had to make that choice right now, I would choose what you suggest, Gemma, which is to demolish it. Yeah.
Thank you. If you were sitting over in Hinsdale, you would be saying what Hinsdale is saying to us. They don't want to be a part of this. It's not about this isn't a good idea, but the Bridge of Flowers, when you talk about income, and they're spending $3.1 million to renovate their bridge. I mean, it's certainly, it's great, it draws a lot of people, but we're not going to have anything like that here. And why would Hinsdale pay for it? They wouldn't get a dime out of the economic driver that is at our back door. And as it was stated, you just went through a budget process, and you're lucky you have any hair on your heads trying to get to 10%. We can't afford to take on a project like this, and it's not our property. So getting into a lease, and I don't think the New Hampshire legislature is just going to jump up and down and go, okay, let's do this for Brattleboro, Vermont. So I strongly urge you to not follow this and waste the town manager's time in looking into finding out what impact it would have on us financially, because I'd want to know that before you even considered anything, to say, okay, what's on all of our services, and talking about snow plowing, things that would need to be done, because Hinsdale is not going to be a participant. And I can see them gating up that other end of the bridge so they don't have to answer calls on that bridge. So I think, yeah, nice idea, to imagine something great happening there, but the financial implications to a town that is struggling financially, I don't think this is the best place to put our energy. I think the board should be focusing its energy on other ideas and other places. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so, and I just want to reflect on the comments that we've just heard. And, I think that I suggest that we go forward with this memo, but recognize both the potential and the liabilities and take very baby steps until we can understand what any financial ramifications for the town of Brattleboro would be, especially if Hinsdale does not want any part of it.
I would agree.
Someone want to make a motion and we'll vote?
I made a motion.
Oh, you did?
But I'd like to speak to the motion, which is that we spoke about including in this letter the acknowledgement that there are people who are interested in, or entities interested in bidding, and that there's enthusiasm. Also, we could address some of these questions that are at the end of this memo from the town manager. So the question about who will keep it clean, what will any leaseholder do to maintain safety of the space, we can say that these are questions that any bidder would need to address in their proposal. So I think that's a way of addressing the concerns that have been raised by the Hinsdale Select Board, but acknowledging it and suggesting a path forward.
Well, let me just stop you there and ask and make this statement that a bidder, a potentially winning bidder, would not assume all the responsibilities that the Hinsdale municipality now has. And so we have to make it clear that you would, if you would be expecting a bidder to take on all of those responsibilities and be financially responsible for everything, that's the type of thing that would have to be in the letter.
Point of order question?
Sure.
Which you raised the point. The potential, if Hinsdale wanted to lease or sell this property, what rights does Brattleboro have in any of the negotiations here? And what implications would be put on the successful bidder if there was one? Then what implications would that cause us? Because they're going to be dealing with New Hampshire. They're not going to be dealing with the state of Vermont and or Brattleboro. So if someone could answer that, all this talk about that, they're not dealing with us. They're dealing with New Hampshire. So if you can clarify that, and I'm in agreement with you, Madam Chair.
That's really what this letter is about, that we have this opportunity to chime in on what Hinsdale is asking of DOT and what essentially Hinsdale and DOT will be presenting to potential bidders. And so that's really what this letter is about. John, you want to elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, no, that's how I took it.
That we have this opportunity to inject ourselves into the process while at the same time limiting our liability.
And the New Hampshire DOT may choose to ignore us or not respond positively to what we're asking, but I don't think that means we shouldn't ask. The one potential leverage that you have is that apparently the town does own 7% of the Anna Hunt Marsh Bridge, so that is a benefit in a sense, but it's also a huge liability down the line. And that's what I think you're all weighing here, and I get it, it's very complicated, and we don't know what the cost will be to the town 20 years or 30 years from now. But they may be considerable because this bridge is no longer in the federal highway system.
So I feel like I'm starting to lose the thread here. We are talking about asking you, John, to write a letter that you will share with Hinsdale's Select Board that will result in, hypothetically, a joint letter from the two towns to the New Hampshire Department of Transportation. I guess my first question is this our final participation in that process, this Select Board?
I would say, yeah.
Okay.
We'll see what they say back to us.
Okay. Yeah. And then I feel like we may be we're not making commitments, we're not making financial commitments, we're not making any promises of services. We're basically writing a letter that says we see some mutual benefits, we have some high-level requests, and we acknowledge some of Hinsdale's concerns. So I really feel like this discussion has tipped over a little into, questions of commitments and liabilities that don't exist yet. So,
yes,
but they exist.
They exist,
yeah.
and they're real, and I just think that we need to be mindful of that as we go forward, because, there are potential benefits and there are real liabilities.
I guess I mean as a result of the letter we send and the decision we make now. I mean, the liabilities and the costs and mutual aid, that stuff is already going on status quo. So I guess I'm really not seeing this letter as a big decision that can be incredibly right or incredibly wrong and mistaken. And seems like we're all sort of on the same page about these bullet points.
Yeah, I just
And-
want a letter that's balanced. I just want a letter that says we're offering, we would ask for input in the RP process and so forth, and we recognize Hinsdale's concerns and we share them.
I would suggest that we leave it at we recognize the Hinsdale's concerns. I think that how much we share them or don't, I'm not ready to say that we share all of those concerns. And I think that we want to be, alternatively, I think we could ask that this letter be from the select board and we could review it at a future meeting.
Yeah, I think that's too complicated. If the select board starts writing letters by committee, that'll defeat the purpose of paying for a town manager.
I don't think we're saying we would write it by committee, but that we would approve a letter at our next meeting.
Yeah, we're getting kind of into the micromanaging thing again.
I don't think so because we approve our minutes, right? We approve documents that are from if the select board is writing a letter, then that we could, as a select board, we could send a letter. I don't think that that's micromanaging at all.
I think that, in the memo, and also part of me feels like, not unjustly, but part of me feels like we've spent half an hour longer on this than it needed, but that's how it goes. The memo says it was determined that if both select boards were in agreement, a joint letter could be written, approved, and sent to New Hampshire DOT. I think the idea of us approving the messaging when clearly there's some confusion isn't an outlandish idea.
Well, there's no confusion on my part, just so we're clear about that.
Okay.
I'm not confused at all.
I think, what John has outlined here are wishes for input that our town has on this process with an RFP. We're suggesting the benefits, and these last bullets are recognizing Hinsdale's concern. I don't see a problem with asking John to write a balanced letter and trusting him to do as this discussion identified.
And for the 2 years that I've served on the board and we've directed John to writing letters, we've never gone through this process. We've always trusted. It's always either come back to us with, hey, turns out Hinsdale is interested, or turns out Hinsdale's telling us to go kick rocks, or, if we can meet these requirements as we sort of kind of loosely laid out to giving John direction, then, let's have another conversation. But in the years that I've served on this board, we've never approved a letter that John has written. So I don't see the need or cause to do that now. I think if we give him direction and it reflects what we've discussed here, that is okay by me.
I guess. I just feel like we've heard fears expressed, we've heard optimism expressed, we've heard a lot of different viewpoints expressed, and I'm not totally sure how that comes together in one letter, but I am willing to, yes.
And that's where the balance comes in. We're asking him to write a balanced letter, which is reflective of what was said in the memo and what this discussion was this evening. And so, looking at the strengths and the concerns are what would constitute a balanced letter. Are we ready to vote?
I am.
Will you repeat your motion?
Well, my current motion is to communicate a series of requests to the New Hampshire Department of Transportation regarding its renovation project for the Anna Hunt Marsh and Charles Dana bridges as discussed, and that the Select Board direct the town manager to draft a letter on behalf of the Select Board to be reviewed by the Select Board later this spring, or at a meeting this spring.
You're changing the motion. You're asking John to bring a letter for our review later this spring.
Or at some meeting this spring.
And that's really not what we promised Hinsdale we would do. We've spent the last month working on the budget while Hinsdale's already had several meetings on this topic, And so we're late to the party. And that we can't direct John to write this balanced letter is, let's just say, surprising to me. And I would suggest that we adopt the motion as originally presented. And do we want to have a vote on that?
Well, I've made a motion. If
Well,
there's is that a friendly amendment? Is to
you have modified the original motion.
Mm-hmm.
And so why don't we take a vote on that?
Amanda, do you have any thoughts? Or
I mean, I think we should just vote and get moving.
Okay.
Right, but the question is, Amanda, do you think that it's necessary? Do we bring this letter back to the board to review before we send it in the coming weeks?
Or do we ask John to write
To
it
just
and send it?
write the damn letter?
I don't think it's necessary for us to review it. I think that our feelings have been communicated, and we'll all get to see it.
Yeah.
Right? We will get to see it. We don't have to approve it. Will we get to see it? Okay.
We'll see the letter as sent.
Yes.
Great. Yep. Sounds good.
I'll roll with it.
Let's roll.
Okay.
All right. All in favor of a revised motion? Would you like to revise your motion?
To communicate a series of requests to the New Hampshire Department of Transportation regarding its renovation project for the Anna Hunt Marsh and Charles Dana bridges as discussed.
All select board members in favor of that motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, 5-0. Now, our next element, I think I see Sue Fillion coming to the table to discuss the housing plan update. John, do you want to introduce the matter?
Yep, just Sue has put together this nice update for you all on progress that's been made on the housing action plan, and I turn it over to her to hear the details of that.
Hello. I think I need these. Sorry. So I'm Sue Fillion. I'm the planning director. This is, I think, my fourth report that I've made to the select board since we adopted the housing action plan in 2022. And I'm going to share with you the progress that we're making towards the identified need for new housing units in the plan, talk about development that we might see, and then let you know other activities that the planning department has been up to around housing. So the housing action plan conservatively estimated the need for 519 new housing units back in 2022. We didn't actually have a firm time frame on it, but it was about 5 years is what we were thinking, as much as we could get as quickly as possible. Our best indicator of progress has been to track the number of housing units that we've permitted. But it's important to note that a permit issued does not always mean that it is immediately or ever built. So it's the best method we have right now to track. Since the plan has been adopted, we have issued permits for a total of 213 new housing units. So we're a little less than halfway to the conservative estimate. We have another 306 units to go. Our last, in 2024, we permitted 72 new housing units, and it was our highest number of housing units permitted since the 1980s. In 2025, as of April 28th, when I wrote this report, we had permitted 69 new housing units. And these are net housing units. So we, for example, like one of the projects that was issued this year was 70 units at the chalet, a redevelopment of that property. There's about 35 units in the existing building. So while part of that will be demolished, in the end, there's 35 new units that are going to be created there. And then the other large project for 2025 has been 28 new units in a new building at the Winston Prouty campus.
I'm sorry, Sue, I didn't hear that.
28 units were permitted at the Winston Prouty campus in a new building. So a couple of other observations about our permitting. In addition, as I mentioned, 2024 was the highest number of new units that was permitted since the 1980s. So that's really big. We're seeing both a mix of affordable and market rate housing, including the permits that were issued for Winston Prouty and the Chalet this year. It is a mix of both. We're seeing more multi-unit dwellings being constructed now than we have in the past. Previously, it had been single-unit dwellings. Now it's multi-unit, and it ranges in size from like large 30-unit buildings to 5 units, and somewhere in that more moderate range. Our missing middle housing overlay continues to be useful with people seeking permits in that. That's something that the Select Board adopted in 2023 and has reduced reduced barriers to getting permits for anywhere from 1 to 9 units. Really more 3 to 9 units. There aren't many barriers for 1 and 2 units right now. Brattleboro residents have been taking advantage of the VHIP program. That's the Vermont Housing Improvement Program. That is a state-funded program that is run through the 5 home ownership centers in Vermont. Ours is Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust. The first round of that housing was from 2021 to 2024, and there were 37 units in Brattleboro that received grants from the VHIP program. That they basically are grants of up to $50,000 for private owners to renovate or create new housing units. So that's been successful, and there is a second round that is open now and has enjoyed state support. And with that, with the VHIP funded projects, participants have to agree to rent units at below HUD fair market rents for the county for 5 years. So it's getting some more lowercase a affordable housing. As for pipeline projects, this list is a little less than I think the report that I gave in October, because at any point a project can fall off the list or move into getting permitted, like some of them did. Currently, we estimate that there are an additional 80-plus units in a couple of different multi-unit developments that could come to fruition, but we don't really know what that timeline is. I mentioned in the report that the outlook for housing construction in 2025 is uncertain. Factors such as the interest rates still being high, supply chain costs, labor shortage, and tariffs all have the potential to slow down any housing production. So that includes even the ones that we've permitted. Some of them are still trying to put together their funding stack. So the department has been working, since I think the last report in October. There's been continued work on energy efficiency and weatherization through the Energy Committee and referring people to Efficiency Vermont. We've actively participated in the Housing Coalition. One of the current projects that I'm working on with them is a housing action fair, which is going to be in June. And it's both to share resources with people who are interested in developing housing, or if they're a housing provider. And then we'll also have resources if people are looking for housing. And that'll be held here in Brattleboro. You'll get more information about that. Projects that are still on the horizon is that the Select Board set aside money in the beginning of 2024 to create some housing programs. So we need to ramp up on that and get some of the programs in place. And that will obviously come back before the Select Board. And then another one that I don't think I wrote in the report is last year the legislature passed Act 181, which is a reform to the Act 250 state permitting process. We think that Brattleboro is well positioned to be able to apply to get Act 250 delegation for certain areas of town, which will help streamline permitting and reduce costs for developers we'll also be taking on some added responsibilities if we pursue that. So right now there's beginning to be some training about that, and as the land use board comes up with rules, we're kind of involved in that process. That would probably be by the end of 2026. We would be looking to get that in place, but there's some other regulatory changes that we might need to make in that time. In closing, I just want to mention that I attended a workshop, and there was a case study on a large 200-plus mixed-income housing development that was taking place in Middlebury. And the developer, Summit Properties, talked about the importance of subsidy partnerships. In that case, it was both the town of Middlebury and the college, which really stepped up big. We're all required to make the development work because the economics of housing in rural communities is just still not penciling out. The cost of construction is too high. He'd put together kind of a development checklist that he felt was important to making a project work. And the first was simplifying the regulatory environment. And he had three areas that I think Brattleboro kind of scores really high in all of them. So it was establish designated areas because that exempts housing from Act 250, and it can save money and time in the permitting process. And we have all of those in place here in Brattleboro, and we'll pursue the Act 181, Act 250 delegation as well. Revised zoning for density and flexibility. We've been ahead of the state, I think, in that, and I think that the housing permits that we're seeing issued are a result of that. So that's been really positive. And to streamline the permitting process, and we've done that as well. People really like it when they come and they can get an administrative permit, or it doesn't take multiple reviews before the Development Review Board. We're a 3 for 3 in his development checklist there. He also recommended that towns work to defray the upfront risk and cost, having flexible agreements, limiting capital asks of projects, and identifying and securing low or no-cost land. So that's an area we can do some work on, although we have identified some of the town-owned land that maybe we can talk about that another time. And then the third piece was partnering on funding opportunities, which Brattleboro has done really well with. We support CDBG and other grant applications for developers. We've done it for Wyndham Housing Trust. We've done it for Winston Prouty with some infrastructure funding. So providing direct investment, so that kind of gets to the piece that we still need to do some work on, and creating some sort of housing trust fund with the dedicated funding that we have that will revolve, and we can continue to help with a direct investment. And then the willingness to be innovative. So there is a conversation about TIF districts, tax increment financing, which I think is too late for that tonight, and I need to do some more research. But there are some more creative tools that the legislature is talking about, and so I think if Brattleboro is open and to those when the time comes that where it might make sense for a development in Brattleboro, then I think we'll be in good position. So.
Great. Let me just start by, again, thanking you, Sue. And this follow-up is so welcome, and it's good news for our town, and it's also the history of all of your work as you talked about those checklist items. It's the zoning, it's the permitting, it's the assistance. And really, it's the innovation, and every time the legislature comes, they always say that Brattleboro is a leader in our development regulations across the state, and this development that you're identifying is the fruit of all that labor. And I want to thank you for that, and I want to say that what we provide to potential developers is the certainty of our development regulations and our commitment to seeking new housing in our town. And so I think this is just can't say enough great things, and I think the town of Brattleboro could use some good news, so thank you for that.
Thanks.
Others? Amanda? You have anyone?
I echo what Sue said. Thank you. I mean, I echo what Liz said. Thank you, Sue, and your department.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Same.
And I thank you for keeping us on somewhat of a schedule. Thanks a lot, Sue. Appreciate it very much. Are there comments from the public? Everyone thanks you, Sue.
Thank you, Sue.
I have a great team that I work with.
Yep.
Great, yeah. All right, we have one more item on our agenda. John, you want to discuss the financial services?
So when the finance director position was vacated in January, we initiated a search for candidates there. We were not able to attract a suitable hiring pool. Also during this time, as you know, the assistant town manager's position became vacant as well, and that is a position that has worked very closely with the finance director in the past on budgeting. While we were waiting for finance director applicants, staff in the finance department began reporting to the human resources director, Sally Nix. She's been doing an excellent job of supporting the finances team, but does not have the municipal finance and CFO experience that we were looking for in leadership for the finance team. Also, while we were waiting for applicants, the representative town meeting rejected the 2024-2025 select board's budget, prompting the need for an intensive budget redevelopment process, which we've done in the last month or so. With all those factors coming into play, I reached out to the town's auditor, Bonnie Batchelder at Batchelder Associates, PC, and asked if she would be interested in supporting the town with municipal finance expertise on an outsourced basis during April 2025 and potentially beyond. She agreed to assess the situation, make recommendations, and submit a proposal for longer-term financial services support. As the town's auditor from 2016 to 2024, Ms. Batchelder has been really committed to bringing this town to a strong financial ground. I think the value of a contract with her would be strengthening the use of the town's financial software, our reporting procedures, policies, and budgeting over the next year. She'd examine internal controls. She'd look at existing policies as they relate to overall financial management, something that the select board has indicated an interest in looking at further. And this would include procurement as well as conflict of interest, record retention procedures and policies, specifically as they relate to federal and state grants. She'd review and complete the finance director's annual checklist. She'd be involved in all of the budget processes and support the town as a consultant during upcoming union contract negotiations. She would complete the monthly financial reports that the select board has requested and then also be available quarterly to review those with the board. Ms. Batchelder would be available to the town as necessary and required for various reasons, but would continue to work primarily in a Keene office. The total cost that she's given us for long-term financial services on a retainer basis is $140,000, which would be budgeted over the general fund, $90,000, parking fund, $25,000, utilities budget, $25,000 as well. I've been impressed with Bonnie's work for her meticulousness, her really good questions, and her knowledge of municipal finance. So I would ask that you consider approving this contract, and I have a motion to that effect for you to consider.
Great, thank you, John. Would someone like to make the motion and then we'll discuss it?
I can motion to authorize a retainer contract for professional financial services with Bonnie K. Batchelder, CPA of Batchelder and Associates, PC, at the cost of $140,000 for April 2025 through April 2026.
Great. Would you like to speak to the motion, Peter?
I agree with John. Given the circumstances, I think this is just sort of I feel like we got a little lucky. That's my feeling here, that we were able to kind of act on this quickly. So, yeah.
Great. Anyone else? Oscar?
I have some questions. Yes. So, John, can you give me a sense of what I'm trying to understand the sort of day-to-day experience that we would have. She would do quarterly financial reports. I'm assuming she would not be, or it sounded like she would not be available for, hey, can you be present at this select board meeting where there's a financial question? So would this, and so I guess my questions are sort of, how often would she be interfacing directly with town staff? Is this sort of information comes to her and she works on it out of her office and sends it back? Or I'm wondering what percentage of a full-time finance director we're getting for what is a lot of money. So,
yeah, I mean, the way it's been working, she's been available for anything we've asked, and the turnaround has been fantastic. It's really been that day or the next day on anything. Because she would be commuting over here, she's generally been here like a day a week, but then available by email and phone and everything off that day. With respect to, yeah, she's indicated that, coming over here once a month is an awful lot to ask. She's indicated that she would certainly put together whatever reports that the board is interested in, but would be happy to come speak to them on a quarterly basis, and that's kept our costs down some. So,
sorry, when you just said, it's getting late, but I thought you said just before that she would be here once a week?
Yeah.
Commuting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the expectation, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that commuting once a month for a financial report?
So coming here and being here in the evening once a month was a lot. So we agreed that quarterly would be acceptable because she's pulling together the information for you on a monthly basis, and that will be available.
Okay. And then is this? I imagine there's going to be a lot of that we don't know exactly what the workload will be. This contract covers most reasonable eventualities, or is there some sort of I've gone over my allotted hours and now we're in overtime, or overtime?
It's full. It would be full CFO services. So.
Okay. That's me for now.
Isaac, do you have comments?
Yeah, we had anticipated some savings in the idea of foregoing a finance director for this coming budget, and it looks like those savings will not be realized with this position, but I think we should move forward with it and look towards other options in terms of a finance director, actually retaining a finance director, moving forward, and look to recruiting that position in the future. But for right now, I support this.
I think what we talked about in our budget negotiations was that of both the finance director and the assistant town manager, both of whom work on the budget, that the savings would come from the assistant town manager, and the financial director would be on this contract basis. Anyone else? Amanda, you have a comment?
No, not at this time.
Okay, very good. We have 3 people. Yeah, Dick, you want to begin?
I stayed late just for this. So it looks like you're going to hire her. Who's going to do the audit? Because I certainly don't want someone who's going to be doing our financials, doing our audit. So
John, can you answer that?
if you would address that. I can
Yep.
go home to bed.
Absolutely, she can no longer be our auditor. That is a good point. We will do an RFP for audit services as soon as possible. So.
Very good. Now.
Nell Mayo, District 8. I just speaking to what I think Isaac was getting at is my understanding was the budgeted finance director salary was something like $98,000, and so there was an anticipated savings of like $8,000 to $14,000 or something under the contract. And I'm not trying to nitpick, and I'm not criticizing this decision at all. But I think he was just saying that the contract amount exceeds it, and you explained where that money is coming from. But yes, it does technically, it changes the budget line. That was how I interpreted his statement. I'm very pleased to hear of the contract. That's all.
Gemma.
More District 8. My concern here is that we may be looking at a false economy here. The available salary was $95,000, and, we're saying that nobody wanted to take the job at that level. Now, granted, benefits cost more than $95,000, but $140,000 is a full-time salary. And now we're talking about getting somebody barely part-time, if that. I mean, 1 day a week, they won't even come 1 day a month, and they're being paid $140,000. The question that I have here is, if no one was taking the job at $95,000 with full benefits, exactly what level of salary does the town manager believe we would have had to offer in order to attract somebody of this caliber? And if that's more than $140,000, including benefits, how much more? And is it a small enough amount of money that what we should really be doing here is talking about hiring a full-time finance director whose loyalty is only to the town of Brattleboro and not to their private work? Thank you. I'll cede the rest of my time.
Sean, would you like to answer that?
Well, I don't know what we would have to offer to attract a full-time person with the experience that Bonnie has. I do know that, as a consultant, she has costs of her business and everything else that she's got to cover. That's why generally it's less expensive to hire staff than it is to contract things out. We've been forced into contracting things out for various reasons, and sometimes it costs us more than we could expect to get otherwise. I don't know if we could find somebody for, the 140 plus benefits, but that's probably the neighborhood that we're in here. If we want to go back out and find a finance director. So.
And it's serendipitous that we have a person who will be willing to do this work, who spent the last 10 years working on our budget.
Yeah, she has good insight and can be pretty efficient.
And it's my understanding that the last time we were without a finance director, we hired one on a contract basis until we could hire one, a full-time person.
Yeah, that is true.
And so that's the plan here, and I think it's good use of consultant services because being a consultant myself, I know that you hire services that you don't have on staff, and because it's a specialty.
And it's just worth noting that maybe 140 in salary would get it done, but 140,000 plus benefits is a lot more than $140,000 in a contract. So.
All right. Are we ready to vote?
Yep.
Has someone made a motion, or would they?
I did.
Yeah.
You did. Short-term memory. Okay. Peter has made a motion to authorize a retainer contract for professional financial services with Bonnie K. Batchelder, CPA, of Batchelder Associates, PC, at the cost of $140,000 for April 2025 through April 2026. All Select Board members in favor of that motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, that's 5-0. Thank you very much. I'll take one more motion. Yes.
I move to adjourn this meeting.
Great. Isaac has made a motion to adjourn. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
That passes 5-0. Thank you all. Thank you, public. Thank you, interpreters. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, John.